Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Between Two Heads. As always, my name is Jameson, Welbourn. I'm joined by my co-host, Addison, DeMoura. And today we are joined by the award-winning solventless maker, Ben McCabe. Ben, thanks so much for taking the time, man.
No, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, bro. So we've got a ton of stuff to dive into. You've been working on a number of cool projects recently, but as we like to always do on this show, we want to take it back. So let's start off. I know you came up in Connecticut. Talk to me a little bit about where you're from and what your childhood was like.
Yeah, I grew up in Waterbury, Watertown area of Connecticut, which is like, I don't know, nobody seems to know it. Few people do, but it's like the armpit of Connecticut. But yeah, I grew up there, man. And, you know, really got in. I started smoking weed at like 11 years old, me and my buddies. I remember the first time my buddy's brother was smoking weed the whole time. We're like, dude, I would never do drugs. I'd never do this. And then my buddy called me one day and he's like, man, I got high. And I was like, immediately, I was like, I got to do it. Just pure pressure, fucking instantly.
So what age was that?
That was like 11 years old. And that was like right sixth grade, I think.
Yeah. So what kind of kid were you like were you a class clown? Were you kind of a troublemaker, or what were you like?
I think I was I was a little bit of a punk for sure. I definitely got in trouble. I think I got suspended for I think I spit on somebody for some reason, like just dirty, like scumbag shit.
Damn.
I was a little fucking. I wanted to be a tough guy when I was younger. I always wanted to be older than I was.
Tell us a little bit about that first experience with cannabis.
My buddy. The first time. So my buddy stole weed from his mom used to smoke, his mom and her boyfriend. So we stole a roach out of her fucking ashtray, and then like a little bit of what I assume was weed, and we literally went and smoked it under a bridge in my hometown. I was like, this is like a classic like fucking advertisement for not smoking weed. I don't remember. Everybody says like, oh, I don't get high the first time I smoke. I don't know if I did or not, but like after that we started. I mean, we got weed all the time, and we would try to smoke every day if we could. And it was never like every day was a mission to get high, and like we rarely fucking accomplished that when we were that young. But we used to hit G-bones all the time. That was our thing. And I used to get like psychedelic fucking high where it's, I mean, a few times where you just pass out. There's no fun involved. But yeah, man.
Did you have older brothers or sisters at all?
I had an older brother, but my older brother was like straight edge at the time, like X's on the hands. He was in like a metal band and yeah. So all him and all his friends most of his friends were all straight edge, and I was his younger brother, and I was smoking weed. I was doing all sorts of things, not just weed. And then by the time I was like 14, I was like selling weed to all his friends who started smoking.
Oh, nice.
But it was actually my best friend's older brother who got us into weed. Like my best friend's older brother, I think he was like 2 years older than us, but he was like a couple years ahead, of course. And he was like one of the popular kids, smoked a bunch, and we got to hang out with them. And that's where I got into all the bad things. Well, good things now, bad things then, I suppose.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
So
yeah, shit. And then
weed became prevalent like really quickly. Like it was your first experience in that, and then it was something that you wanted to have almost every day. What was it like by high school? Like were you sourcing?
So I mean, even in like 7th, 8th grade, like we got to a point where, I mean, before I could drive, we were running around. We smoked. We tried to find a blunt every day. Like when I grew up, it was just you can get dubs, 20 bags, right? You get 2 for 35, 1 for 20, 2 for 35, 3 for 50, and that was it. If you wanted a fucking quarter pound, you'd have to buy it at fucking Dubs, and all we could get was haze and sour, like New York haze, this AJ sour cut, and regs. That was the three options. There was, and once in a while you get White Shark coming in. But we would just, if you had 5 on it, 4 of us on a blunt, $5, like that was every day. All you had to do was get $5 from mom or whoever the fuck would give it to you, however you could get it. And that was the mission every day. And then by the time I got into high school, I was selling weed by that point. And I walked in, I went to a private high school. I didn't go to like the public high school with all my buddies. But when I got in there, like we all had to dress, we all like ties and everything on. So I went around to like everybody, all these kids I didn't know. If you looked like smoking weed, I put like an eighth of weed in your pocket. And I was like, yo, call me. Like I got weed, blah, 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 blah. and nobody smoked weed. I found out real quick that like nobody was fucking smoking weed, and I walked around looking like this fucking drug dealer, putting drugs in everyone's pockets, like, hey.
Jesus.
And so I kind of
Did you
got
get in
like,
trouble for that shit?
huh?
Exactly.
Did you get in trouble for that shit?
No, nobody ratted me out really, because we were getting
Wow.
ounces of
Damn.
shake for like $50. So I was selling eighths for like $20 for people, and like, you know, I got not one customer came to me, and I got this reputation around as like the weed guy, or everybody thought I was a drug addict just because they thought weed was drugs at that point.
Yeah.
And then slowly over the years, of course, everybody in my grade like started fucking doing all this shit, and you know, so I went to a private high school like that, and I was still smoking all the time, and then and that's where like things picked up. I was selling a lot of weed in high school. Now that I like look back on it, it was it's a good time.
So that hustler's genetic or the make it happen ability that you so clearly had at a young age, was that born out of necessity, or was that nurtured through an older mentor or friend? Like, where do you think that that hustle came from?
So, I mean, I was just thinking about it the other day, and I'm very much alike a good portion of my family who is go-getter, go get after it, and but also like love to party. Like my family's a big an Irish family, love to drink, and like I found out afterwards, like everybody loves to smoke and stuff too. Especially when I was younger, they're all cleaned up with kids now, but when I was younger, like my family was a party a little bit, and I was selling weed, and like I think I was like 15 years old. Like I was getting in trouble for selling weed and all these other little things. My parents were finding weed all the time, and then my dad told me that, you know, we had the family biz out in NorCal, and I was just like, I was fucking blown away. Like the family has a fucking farm, like, and so I got to go out there. I went out there thinking, you know, I was like, I'm gonna move out here and grow weed, and like, absolutely not. Like fucking growing weed's a lot of work, pulling tarps and being in the garden. That's a whole fucking lifestyle that I'm just not fucking built for.
Did your dad know what your interests were before he told you that fact about the family business, or was it like both?
Yeah, no. Well, he knew that. My parents were divorced, and my dad lived in New Hampshire. So I got in trouble for smoking weed, and then my mom would find like stacks of money, and like, you know, she'd find I don't even have a license, and I've got like $5,000, and she's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And you know, and then she'd be like putting away laundry, and there's like 10 pounds in my closet, and she's like, "What the fuck?" And you know, me and my mom really got along, so I was a total mama's boy. She was really cool about it. And then she told my dad, and like my dad, I don't know whether he was supposed to discipline me or what, but he came down and was just like, yeah, everybody, you know, we're all doing this. And like, I mean, not all of them, but like I have a select few part of my family that's, you know, has farms in NorCal and has for like since the 90s, and tell me stories. Like he was telling me, I think he was trying to warn me, because he was telling me a story like when we got in trouble one time. And so I think he was trying to warn me, but my next fucking phone call was my cousin's like, what the fuck?
So talk to me a little bit about like after you get over the initial elation that, oh my God, this is, you know, a more or less a family business, and something that, you know, not only I'm involved in, but my dad's been involved in for some time. Are you?
Well, I don't think he was. It's only, I mean, it's a select few. It's not like the whole family, but you know, everybody smokes in the family, so it's like I think they're the free weed ATM.
Are you immediately looking to get down there and get closer to the plant, or are you immediately, you know, calling your friends and trying to, you know, see how much more could be taken, or what's your first thought there?
I was like, I need to go there. I need to go there and get weed. Like I was selling a lot of weed at the time, so I was like, oh, I'm going to get rich. Was my first thought. It's like, you know, and which wasn't the case. Like, you know, it was cool, but and like obviously shit went down. But
I'm sure the prices were better. I mean,
they weren't. They were not better. But like the margins were better. The prices were not better. Like, dude, when I started, like pounds were like $4,000 of like, you know, I mean, it was just a lot. And I was like, especially if you get one, like that was it. And if you got price of like 32, like you're in fucking business. Mm-hmm. And then like, you know, if you're getting a box or something like that, I'm sure it was lower, but I wasn't that dude, you know, I was just, you know, I was young, I was getting a little bit, but Yeah, prices were fucking. It was way different, and not everybody sold weed back then too. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I feel bad, like kids like trying to sell weed. Like when I grew up, like a lot of people in town sold weed. We grew up in a small town, and like they had the weed and you had the money. It wasn't like, oh, I got vape pens and edibles and this brand and that. Like it must be a nightmare to sell weed now.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, it's never mind. Just with like social media for kids too, that's even tougher.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I would drive around and I was like, I remember thinking like, I wonder if the cop sees me drive down this same road 15 times a day and knows that like I'm just driving back and forth selling weed. And so I used to think about it like that, like even just I was driving around the same roads too much, and now people are like posting it, and it's like which nobody seems to give a shit about weed anymore. So
did you ever
did
you ever get in any trouble at all? Did you ever have any run-ins with the law or anything like that?
No, not really. I mean, well, not for weed, for other things for sure, but nothing serious. I got a felony one time, but like I got a lawyer and like I got taken care of. Nothing serious. I was blessed enough, and like there were people very close to me that did, and that like I remember. I mean, just as you saw weed, sometimes people get busted, and it's scary as fuck. Because I had friends go to jail for a few years, that they were close to me. So that was, I've always felt a little blessed. Even to this day, like I stop, like if I'm doing something stupid, I'm like, all my luck, I used up all my coins when I was before 18. You know what I mean? Like I got very little leeway left.
I know that feeling. Ben, I wanted to ask you about your first trip out to California. Like, had you cultivated a plant before, or was this never. Completely? You never cultivated a plant?
Never touched one. No. When I first went out there, I'd never cultivated a plant. I don't even know if I've seen a plant at that point, because we were we were just getting dubs, and we would go to the hood to get fucking, you'd buy 50 dubs and then you go sell those. Like it wasn't like we had any, access to even ounces, let alone like the plant or a grower or yada yada. We were like whatever we could get.
So what was that first trip like? Like, was it just a trip from hell and it was immediately apparent?
No, it was like, part of not hell, but like part of it. I mean, it was mind blowing. You go out there and especially you see family. It's not just like you see a plant, but you see this fucking farm of weed. There's endless weed. You want to smoke a joint? Smoke another one. It doesn't cost any money. I'm coming from $20 for a dub to like there's just plethora of things everywhere. And I mean, it's just the NorCal grower life up on the hill. And I remember harvesting one year, like the first, I think this might have been the first trip, if not one of the first trips. We were harvesting a greenhouse. For some reason, they called like, we got to fucking harvest now. And it was like somebody saw a helicopter or some shit. We all got scared. So we went up there and harvested this whole greenhouse, and it was like a clear night. And we put it in the back. We have to take it down from the greenhouse. We're going to dry somewhere else. So we get a Penske truck. It's like one of the big ones. And we line up rope and we hang all the plants in there. And we're going to go drive it to the fucking, to the drying place. And I remember they put me, for some reason, I drove the truck. And I had like 2 follow cars, 2 front cars. And like, I was just driving. It was a full moon. And like, we're up on this mountain ridge. So you can like see the whole valley. Full moon, you can see the whole valley at night. Beautiful stars everywhere, and I'm sitting there in this truck just like, what the fuck is life right now? I've got this entire garden in the back of this truck on it was like a psychedelic experience. It was just like it felt fucking cool. It felt like I've got all this weed, like I'm in the club, like it was fucking everything, man. And I'll remember that till the day I die. That was really cool, and it just blew my mind of like what we were doing.
That's very cool.
It's like you felt like you had arrived or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I was like, this is it. I was like, I made it, baby.
Yep.
It felt cool to be driving the truck. Like, oh, cool. Like I'm fucking on the team. I got like an important job. Yeah, they trusted me to like, okay, Ben's driving the truck, and I just felt I was just like, yeah, it really put wind in my sails just to like go do shit.
No, that's awesome. But I think that like anytime you get involved in something like that for the first time, and you do feel that responsibility because you've worked and you kind of earn that special position or that special role or something like that. It definitely is a good feeling. And it is arriving. It's like a rite to passage or something into that world from, like you said, just shortly before that, you're putting $5 in to get high. And then you figure out like, wait a minute, this is fucking Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And then you're getting to go back to it. So it's definitely probably a like affirming kind of a feeling.
Well, that feeling is like, I mean, that feeling of that like accomplishment of like it's working out, and like this is a risk I took, and like this isn't a road a lot of people travel, especially at that time. Like there wasn't like, how do I get into the weed business? It was like, no, you had to fucking know something, and just to be doing that was just like, I like, I can't believe that like I thought about this and it came to fruition, and then that happens all the time, and I think that feeling I chase, like that's the high. Like if you sold that in a bag, man, I'd be done for. Because like just that feeling of like, okay, I'm doing it. Like I'm good. Like I did a good job. I got to the point where I wanted to be, to like see your goals and accomplish them like that when they're like, kind of unrealistic is amazing. And I still feel that to this day. Like you get nervous before a job, you go do something, you're going to talk to somebody, you got a big event coming, and then like it all goes. It's like that's the best. Everything goes great, and everybody's having a good time. And it goes better than you could have expected. Like that's the best high in the world. That sense of accomplishment.
So on that first trip, how quickly did it become apparent that this might not be the chosen vocation inside of the cannabis industry that you wanted to participate in?
Yeah, it was well, I'm not a grower, dude. I'm like, I get sunburned fucking easy. It's hot out there, moving through the trees, you get all like, I got allergies and shit. I'm like, it's just, going through those plants, trimming, like I'll never fucking trim another plant in my day. If you wanted to pay, I'll pay someone just so I don't have to. And then like just being in the garden, like it was hell on earth for me. Like, and it was tiring. And like, everybody thinks you move out to Cali and you're in weed. Everybody's a stoner and you're going to get rich. Like, no, it wasn't fucking easy work. And I found out real quick, like I was not a grower, and like I wasn't going to last, and I was homesick, and like, all the thrills were like, okay, like I'm smoking weed all day long. All the thrills are like, okay, we've done it. I found that out quick, and I was like depressed. I went back and like what did I do? I think I got back into doing electrical when I went back. I was an electrician at that point. When I was like after high school, going out there and really like considering living there. Yeah, finding out like I'm not a grower, dude. God bless the people who are, because like I've said, like as a hash maker, like the grower creates the quality. That's where it all starts. The grower creates the quality, hash maker accentuates it. And it's like, even like the red light from the sunset. I heard somebody tell me, they're like, oh, like I pull my tarp right before the red light because the red light that damages the resin. I'm like, what? You're thinking about fucking red light on the sunset? Like how many variables do you have from your soil to like the temperature to the wind to the yada yada? It's like, it's a fucking nightmare, and like, so God bless those guys. And I couldn't hang, man. Couldn't hang.
Amen.
Yeah. I think some of those guys too, they say the same thing about working in the lab. They say the same thing about processing. It's like totally
different breed, different.
And like you said, that is hard work. That's farming. That's ultimately what that is. And no matter the fact that what you're farming, for a lot of people, they can keep it in their head that like, I'm doing all this because I'm going to make X at the end. Yeah. That, that'll drive some people sometimes. And I think that kind of, but you have to be a fucking ox to do these things. And It sounds like you figured out quickly that you're not an ox.
No,
you're more surgical.
I wanted to be, man. I got no calluses. It's not fucking.
Yeah, it's. I mean, everybody. But that's kind of cool though, because what it sounds like is you're being led in the direction of where you ended up. It sounds like you're kind of taking the steps forward. So how do you end up? Like, what happens after this? What's next?
Well, I mean, all of this, like, to be talking to you guys right now, it's like I didn't try to get anywhere. It's like all of a sudden I ended up places, and like it wasn't like, oh, like I was, with not being grown, because I thought I was going to be a grower. I was like, that's it for me. This is my profession now. I don't have to worry. Mm-hmm. And then I hated it, and then I came back, and I was like, I don't know, just like one thing led to another, and like I was just kind of, as most people are, just kind of floating around doing whatever. We're still probably selling a lot of weed, and then my buddy showed me, at this point, maybe this was like 2010-ish, maybe. It was like shortly after high school. I graduated in 2008, went out to Cali, realized all that. And shortly after, one of my buddies who from Florida showed me how to make BHO with like, I had to go out and find a stainless steel turkey baster, which was very hard to do for some reason. And then, stainless steel turkey baster, throw an eighth inside, hose clamp with some coffee filters, and I started making open blasting and just going that route. And like I remember like we would just do it and just leave it out, and then like we found out about purging, and like that was like blew our minds. And started making hash that way. I started like not to sell it, like I was selling weed, but just to smoke, just because I wanted to get high. And it was like I mean, it was at such another level. And then how you smoked it, right? Like you had to torch it up, and like, you know, it was always a story of like, you know, throwing it on the nail when it's red hot. Like that was it. Maybe it was a little later than 2010. I don't know, but it was somewhere earlier, 2010s, something like that.
Yeah, that's right in line there. I mean, I think I might have taken my first dab, right? And I think it was BHO, and it was like a hot fucking nail. Some, you know, I think Vern. Yeah. I think that kind of lines up with like Jameson. When was like the first? Because the swing came out in what, like
I want to say maybe it was 2012 or something like that. I don't know.
No, I'm thinking 06. 06, I think.
06?
In 05, 06, the swing came out. That's when I think about it.
Oh, I remember what changed the game was when I think it was Nick and T came out with this little screens for melt that you put over. That was like, that was like a totally new way to be able to like smoke melt, like before there were
for like the circular e-nails.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about those things.
Yeah, that was those things. Like, and then when Hitman had like the domeless that like you flipped over, I was like, that's how you know. It was cool, man. As soon as we started dabbing, like we were making a ton of BHO at one point, and just my buddy Dan taught me a lot about that, and like he was the one who really got me into like dabbing heavy.
Yeah. Were you going and taking those skills you learned and applying them on a larger scale back out in California at all, or were you staying out east, or what did it look like for the next?
I was out east for the most part. Like that didn't come, like doing large scale extraction. That probably didn't come until 2014, 15, probably 15. Maybe even 16. 16 is like was really probably pretty heavy. But you know, like my family, they didn't make any hash. So I went out there and it was like a garage full of fucking trim that like, they're like, we don't know what to do with it. And I was like, fantastic. And I came in there and I figured out a way to like we were getting like from Cross International to get those like propane sized butane tanks. And I figured out a way to just take those and I would do 100 pounds, like just in a weekend by myself, just fucking open blasting and with a couple ovens and making hash, and so that's like really where it started to kind of
show your true value.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little older at that point. Like I found my lane, and then I was like, because it was like chill. Like I could work. It was relaxed. Like I wasn't in the farm all day, sweating my balls off. I was inside in the AC, you know, not blasting inside, but yeah, it was that.
You can admit to blasting.
I look back at it now. I didn't even think about it, but yeah, that really was where I found my lane a little bit. And I was traveling back and forth from Oregon in like 2015, 2016, just doing that for the most part. I remember us coming down from Oregon one time, and I had 30 fucking butane tanks. I rented a pickup truck, and I had 30 propane-sized butane tanks in the back of it with a tarp over it. And I had never driven from Oregon to Cali or into California very much. And there's a fucking border checkpoint. And like I got fucking weed on me. I've got 30 cans of butane. I was like, oh fuck, a border checkpoint. I was like, I didn't think this was. And then they were like, you got any bananas? And I was like, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it's produce, agriculture.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
So where did it go from there? Like your what was the next pivotal point in the evolution of your career?
Well, I started before I really moved out to Oregon, and after I realized I didn't want to go to be a farmer, really, I got a job at first legal place in Connecticut, a place called Theraplant, and they were like kind of like Curaleaf minded, like Wall Street money coming in like just 2014, and they were. So a corporate kind of company for the first legal weed job. And I met one of the investors there, Dan, who I'd mentioned before. He really got me into like dabbing heavy all the time and kind of teaching me like how to manipulate resin. Like I had done like BHO and like I had done some bubble hash before I got to this company. But there, all they really had was CO2. And like CO2 is kind of trash. It has a signature on it. If you smoke it, like for smoking products, it's trash, right? It has its applications depending on your business model. But we learned how to manipulate resin there. It wasn't about like, okay, how do we make hash and like smoke hash and we're looking for flavor and like all those things. This was like, how do we make products? How do we make topical creams? How do we make tinctures, capsules, fucking everything, right? And we had to find a way to infuse it and dose it. And like, you know, we're using a CO2 machine and centrifuges and rotovaps. And I had never gone to college or anything. I got a high school as an electrician. So like, I'm out of my fucking league. And I picked it up pretty quick. My buddies Dan and Matt really taught me like how to manipulate resin. And then the higher ups left there and I got kind of fed up. with that, and I asked for a raise for like, I think I was making like $16 an hour. I'd like trained people, I'd made some products. I asked for $20, they said no, and I put my resignation letter on the table without knowing what to do, and without knowing what I was going to do afterwards. And one of my now good friends and investors there was starting a thing out in Oregon, and gave me an opportunity out there where he had a lab and a grow, and they were growing some great flower, and we're making BHO and stuff out there, and yeah, so that's kind of how I went out there, and running around selling weed to dispensaries all over Oregon, just pounds in the trunk, doing that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. That I feel like I got into the game late in that. I mean, I say back in the day, that's like golden age for me, but like it was that way for a while before I got out here, and I think I came in like right at the end of that. And so that's where I got into like the more like business front, like actually meeting people in the West Coast style of weed, which is very different from East Coast, especially Connecticut. It's like one of the strangest markets in the fucking world right now.
Can you talk about that a little bit for an outsider listening to you to kind of understand what those nuanced differences are?
Well, I mean, it's not nuanced at all in Connecticut. Like Connecticut, you can't call, like, say you had sour diesel, right? Like you can't call it sour diesel. You can't call weed. It's like I don't understand whose this thought process this is, but if like say we had, for all the strains, we had to make up a name, and it had to be like a new name. So we would call it like Flexicon or like Lexa something. Like they were using like Greek names that like, or Latin names that like nobody understood, because that was the only thing that was compliant. And it's just in jars. There's no branding out there. There's just the companies, and like those, you have to name it like that, and then they put it in all pop tops. It's not really too many glass jars. It might be now, but when we were out there, it wasn't. And you couldn't even see the weed before you buy it. You just had a fucking list, and that was it. And it told you THC percentages. And like, when you get weed, like first thing you do, like you smell that. It's like, it's always about that, like feeling it, like there's a part of that, just like, part of looking at it and shit. And so it's just a very strange market in that way. And they have, even edibles. It's just it's weird. Everybody's it's hard to buy weed. Whereas like Oregon is, and in California at that time, you had deli style, where it's just, you had fucking jars on the wall, and you want an eighth, and you're like, give me a gram of this, a gram of that, 1.5 of that. And they're like chopstick thing,
mm-hmm.
which is great, because weed stays fresher in larger batches. Right. And so like the weed was better. Like everything about it was better. It was like, take this, they take it so seriously in these medical states, especially in Connecticut. They think it's like fucking oxy or something, where like people are going to get, it's like we're talking about, like we're smoking a joint, like what the fuck with all this regulation and the unnecessary steps, I don't know. It was strange. There's a medical aspect to it, but everybody's getting stoned for the most part. And
so it's just overregulated, and essentially it doesn't make much sense. Yeah.
Extremely. So like coming out here, it was like, I had a trunk full of weed selling it legally to dispensaries, and it was cool. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was still very much like, you were just slinging trees, but it was started to be like, entering to the business of it. And then right before that, I was doing all this extraction, making products, learning how to manipulate resin. And then out here, we really started to do large scale butane extraction, and really had like labs running, and, making hash, and started to make like high end hash. Like that's when we first like made like terp juice and diamonds. We didn't know what it was. I thought I fucked it up. I was like, I called my buddy. I was like, it's all fucking crusty. I was like, we just ruined the batch. Like we got like, we had got a bunch of, and it was all dried and cured material. But I was like, I didn't know what the fuck happened. I thought we ruined it because it wasn't a slab, or it wasn't buttered up, or, and then there was a changing of the guard over there. And then that's when I moved to Cali, and like shit really started to take off. That was in like 2016. I think I moved to Cali, maybe 2017.
And so when you say that really took off, like what opportunity did that afford you?
Which one? Going to Cali?
No, the two individuals leading that lab stepping away, and you being able to kind of take the front and center.
Oregon. Well, in Oregon, there was like it was me and the investor guy who I mentioned. We made a bunch of hash there and stuff, and then he ended up leaving for various reasons, and then one of the other investors who I really didn't get along with, he was kind of like running the show at that point. So, and that was it just wasn't the right spot for me. And then at that point, I had met the guys from Show and Rosin Tech, and like thought it was a good choice to pack my shit and drive down to LA. Total from Eugene, Oregon down to LA was a total fucking culture shock.
So talk a little bit about that. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, man. That's so. Was traveling. So when I was up in Oregon, we also had like this vape pen line. It was like Dank Fung. My buddy made it, all these vape pens, and we were traveling around, like going to Champs trade shows, and like, real getting into, Champs and the Big Show. And High Times cups and like started traveling with him a little bit. That's where we met the guys at Show and Rosin Tech, like in their very early days. I mean, it was just Rosin Tech at that point. It wasn't really Show. It turned into Show. But it was just Rosin Tech, and they were selling rosin presses and stuff like that. And there were a couple of East Coast guys, and I really got along with them, and we kind of connected and hit it off. So I made the choice to move down there with them and immediately started just traveling and representing Rosin Tech. I started out as a salesman for like rosin presses and solventless equipment because I had, the most knowledge on cannabis at the time and making hash and making extraction. So I like really was the professional and like, okay, like how are we best utilizing this equipment? And like, and then I found I was a shit salesman. So I was just kind of like the resident weed guy at that point, like advising people on, particularly our sales reps on like how to speak about the products and answering questions from people buying the products that they maybe weren't quite capable of doing. And then, but a big part of that was trade shows. We traveled, we did trade shows. Like I was on the road 2-3 times a week going to trade shows in Toronto, fucking all over the United States. We've gone to Colombia, Uruguay, Spain. Like I traveled everywhere with those guys for 3 years straight, 3.5, 4 years maybe.
Wow.
Just, to Europe, to South America, Canada, Hawaii. Like we went to every trade show and met so many people. And like in doing that, like I had a understanding of how to make hash and rosin, was just coming out, and like I'd made a bunch of melt before, and that's where it like really I got to meet so many people, and I learned a lot. Like I was the resident guy there, like being able to talk to customers, educate people on what is rosin. Like at all these High Time shows, the whole team would be educating people. What is solventless? What is solventless? Like from MJ BizCon to fucking Spanibus, and that was a lot of fun, dude. We traveled the world. We were like a big family. Awesome time, and I learned so much from other people I met there who were much more skilled than me on solventless and making high-end shit, and just kind of expanding not on really product manufacturing but like hash as a whole. And like I had the great understanding of like terpenes and flavors and just knowing the varieties of weed without a book, just like and so that really was a good thing to meet these people, people like Nick T and a bunch of different people. Noel from Nectars, or those guys in the early days really like kind of were cool and like lended knowledge. And I mean, Nick put so much education out there. He's a fantastic teacher. So yeah, I really got to just learn a lot from traveling and meeting people all over the fucking world who were doing solventless. And then we started at Show. I started because I wasn't doing sales really. It was we started doing consulting on like setting up labs with the equipment and helping people do large scale extraction, because I was also doing that myself on the side and stuff. So and then we ended up shortly after getting the licenses in California to actually produce hash, actually take in licensed fresh frozen and be a brand within the California cannabis market, which was like always the goal, right? Like when we started with them, like that's what we were going to say. Okay, we're going to end up making hash with this one day, and like that's great because I'm not like a salesman. Like I'm just not my doesn't suit me. Just like growing doesn't. And so when we got there, that was great, and then we started putting hash on the market and building Rosin Tech Labs at that point.
What were some of the first cultivars you came to market with?
I think it was Banana OG was like, I think that might have been one of the first ones. And to this day, I love Banana. Like, and it's all for a lot of it was from Sean up at Monterey Kushko and Sours. He's the one who have like in 2019, like before Rosin Tech was like a brand. I think it was 2019. Yeah. Me and him took what was it, Dabadoo in Miami. That was like the first award. I was like, oh shit, I was like blown away. I'd won that. And
can you talk about that a little bit? Can you talk about your relationship with Sean at Sours and also your experience at that Dabadoo competition?
Yeah, I went. So Sean and I met just like when we were starting the lab. We needed sources, and he was one of the first people I got introduced to. I think it was through my buddy Nick, and he took us up there and he showed us the farm in Salinas. And I don't think he was producing a ton of fresh frozen for solventless at that point. I mean, he was a monster like with all the other companies everywhere, but he had some really unique flavors that he bred, like fruit stripe and cherry blossom. I think were two that like were his cuts, and And then he also had Banana OG, and that one was just like, that's a super, it's a pleasure to wash and process for solventless. It's just like, if you're starting to do solventless, like that or straw nana are like your, what you should learn on, or GMO really. But like those things that are just a pleasure to process. And so we took some of that material and one, a California brand one, I took that material and sent it to Miami and won the Dabadoo down there. And that was great. Like I did it like, one of the owners at the company told me, they're like, let's enter this. And I was like, what? Like, oh, okay, like whatever. I didn't even think about it. And then, so I sent it in because we weren't supposed to, I sent it in under like my name. And, we ended up taking that. That was like one of the first batches we made with Rosin Tech, like in the lab that we had and everything like that, sourcing fresh rosin. So I actually didn't get to go to Miami. We had an inspection at the lab that like just came up. So I had to be at the lab to do the inspection. So like the owners of the company and like one of my other boys, Ben, actually went out there, and our buddy Felix from Colombia, they were out there representing for us. And then we ended up winning. And I just watched it on fucking FaceTime or whatever. And I was tight about that. But yeah, we ended up winning the Dabadoo there with the Banana OG. And the Banana OG fruit stripe, I think it was cherry blossom. I think there might have been one more, but I'm blanking on the name. That was like the first drop for Rosin Tech as well onto the market.
That is very cool, bro. So you also had the pleasure of collaborating with Sours at the 2020 Legends.
So we did Legends
2021.
2021.
So in 2020, we also did Emerald Cup. I entered in a bunch of stuff with Sean, and we took second place. I believe seventh, maybe. I think his didn't take seventh. I'm sorry. We took second place with his garlic juice. So that was the second award that we won together, which was fantastic. I was, that was a rush to get in, and I was just blown away. Emerald Cup, like the biggest stage in legal cannabis, so it was pretty cool to do that with him. And then Legends, I also partnered with him. So like everything I've done where awards or anything I've won has been with Sean's material. So in Legends, we did a blend of, we had some Tallyman, what was it? Tallyman, we had some cherry, and then banana tricks. And the cherry, I think it was like I forget what the cherry one was, but the cherry one was the real flavor that we were after. And I was trying to use like the banana tricks with yield, and had great resins, like a Trojan horse to like get those other terps in there. And yeah, we ended up winning, which was there was a lot of heat there. There was like I was saying before, the Moonbow from Archive and Damn It Bobby. That's like that to me was number one. I thought that was blown. I was about to leave early at the event. I didn't think there was a shot. There were legends in that room, and I was like, I'm the fucking new guy, and ended up taking it. Super grateful for that.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting night too, and I think what kind of happened too, because I agree. I felt like Moonbow was after getting months with all the entries and getting to try everything. I felt like Moonbow was probably one of the better ones, and that's kind of, that whole thing is one of the reasons why we added the full judging to Legends for next year and stuff. Yeah. And it's not that you guys didn't. You won based on the fact that the product that you guys had was the first to run out. That was technically, what the competition was, or the dinner was based on. So
yeah. Well, the who else was? I was real impressed with the lemon dog shit. I think it was Ice House Melts. That's also like.
Well, all three of you guys.
I would buy that any day of the week. Like that shit was so goddamn good.
It's funny that you say that, because all three of you guys actually were first, second, and third.
Yeah. No, that was, and then what? I mean, there was a lot even, but the Screaming Mimes, I think it was Wook Sauce.
Oh,
Frosty's entry with Panacea was fucking flame.
Chris.
There was a bad hash in the house, dude. It was fucking. No, it was great.
No, it was amazing, and it was a lot of fun. What was the experience like for you at the moment when you actually won the award?
I had just left at that point. I think it was a couple months beforehand. I had left Rosin Tech, so there was there were some things going on at the higher level with Rosin Tech that just I'd been there a while, and we didn't see eye to eye on certain things, so ended up leaving there. Good terms and everything. Still love those guys. Mm-hmm. They're still killing it. It was time for me to move on, and I was I was moving back east at the time. My father got sick, unfortunately. So I was like, I left there. I was moving back east, and before I was going to move back east, Legends was coming up, and I got invited to that, and I so I hit up Sean, and we ended up watching so the support of Frosty helped us watch that too. Shout out to Frosty for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to enter anything. Like I didn't have a lab. I just left there, so I had no lab set up, no nothing. And Frosty helped us helped us lend his equipment to us to actually make that hash. So like without Frosty, then nothing would have happened there. So shout out to him and Jessica. But yeah, and then so I was there. I was gone from there for 2 months, and like I was kind of lost. I was moving back east. I was like, all right, what's my next step career wise? Like there's opportunity out there, but like what the fuck am I gonna do? And then we won that, and so that was like huge because I really wasn't expecting it. I was really Moonball, those other guys, I was like, fuck, they blew it out of the water. And so to win that at that time was huge for me personally. That might be like one of the things that like impacted me the most. Was like, oh, okay, like I can do this. Like I fucking belong here. I can like survive with these. I can be a peer with these guys, not like the little guys. So that really, like, I don't know, that was huge at that moment for sure. Because you lose a job that you've been at for leave a job that you've been at for so long, and then you're moving across the country, like all this shit. So to win that, like that meant the world to me personally. Yeah, that was huge for confidence wise, and just like keeping that fucking train going during crazy times.
And to be honest with you, after being there and after having all the months to try everything, the banana milkshake is nothing to pretend that's not good. I think the 3 strains that were selected as first, second, and third all belonged in first, second, and third. I think that for good reasons, and after trying everything. So, but you are very humble. That's kind of your
I think
of the sword.
Well, it's an imposter syndrome thing, dude. It's like I don't understand. Like I never went to college. I never did shit, and all of a sudden, like I'm making hash in this space, and like I'm talking to you guys on a podcast, and it's like it's crazy. Like I didn't try to do shit. You know what I mean? A lot of people try very hard to have like a good, successful life, and I've been so blessed and met the right people to like be where I'm at. I'm really fortunate for that. So it is like, you go to these events and there's people you look up to. I'm like watching people on Instagram, like, wow, what are they doing? Oh, quite cool. Like I'm learning different shit, right? And then you're in the same room, and like you see so many other things that hashes that you love. And like at that point, I'm a banana milkshake fucking 24 hours a day for a month trying to make this shit. It's in my face. Like at that point, I'm like tired of it. I'm like, I'm ready for a new flavor. That Moonball was fucking crazy. And like, yeah, but the hash was melty. It was fire. Like, I'm not denying that at all. I'm just, I was, again, really humbled and like blessed to have done that, because there are so many legends out there, like Nicotile, who I like learned a lot of shit from. Like he was involved in the event too. It's competing against him. So it's not like what award you win, but who are you competing against, in my opinion, because like a lot of people can make good hash, but it's also about access. It's about access. Like you posted something about that a while ago. Like this whole game's about access, right? Grower creates that quality. The hash maker accentuates it and isolates it. You know what I mean? And so, it was just, I was just, I was really proud to do that, because that's, again, a lot of heat in that room, a lot of big names that like, again, like are just fucking legends. Like if I want to buy hash, like that's where I want to go. So that's,
No, it's humble. You're very humble in that way.
Very humble
too, that you have like that East Coast work ethic. Like you said, you're an electrician, you're these things. So you have this drive and this work ethic where it's like, I know I have to get this work done or I'm not going to fucking eat. And that drive, along with that drive, though, you're a good person. Like I know you personally. You're honest. You're friendly. You're a thoughtful friend. Like when you do all those things and you put the two together, whatever the fuck you do, you're going to progress at it, and people are going to want to work with you. It sounds like too, just listening to your story, there was a lot of people at different times in your life when you'd be leaving one thing and you went right into something else, and that shows that like you're a hard worker and you have potential. So I think anything that you put your mind to, you would do well with. But then again, don't shoot yourself short on like your own what is called like social skills, because you have some really strong contacts with a lot of the right people, and I've seen you network really well, because you're just like you walk in, it could be a room full of fucking doctors or growers, and you're like, hey, what's up, guys? Like you could totally blend in and hang out. So, and you make fire hash. I gotta give it to you.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. And really what it is, like I've told people before, I think I was talking to my cousins one time, and it's like, I don't know how you find yourself in this position, but it's like if you like are an honest and try to be a good person to people and do right by people and then just work hard, like the rest of the shit falls into place, man. Like we're all fucking idiots trying to find our way. Like we've all had the same amount of time on this earth. Like there's, so to like, yeah, it's just like you try your best. You have good relationships with people. Like people are willing to teach you, and if like you try, like there's no reason you can't like do anything. It's not like you. Yeah, it's that's the core value of it. People like to work with people they like and they trust. You know what I mean? And that's
yeah.
So
don't do fucked up shit to people who trust you.
Exactly.
Like people. I don't understand why people don't realize
you want people to be able to trust you with the keys to the front door. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like you only get that by you can't like fake that in a certain sense, and that's invaluable. And like most people are pretty smart people, and if you let them do things their way, they'll probably get to the same result that you or I would doing it a different way. And I think people get like, especially, bosses get nervous of like, oh, you do it my way. And it's like, well, if you just let people roll with it, you'd be surprised how good everybody is. And like I said, I've been super fortunate, man. I've worked my fucking ass off to get there and like always try to do right people. And like, I'm so gracious to be here from that. So it's, but it's, if anybody's listening, just be a good person.
Be good. Yeah.
Be good.
Talking a little bit about good people. Before we move on from Rosin Tech, I'd like to talk a little bit about the mentorship that happened between yourself and Drew DeCahuna, because I actually had Drew on the show, on another show that I did, and I got to interview him, and he mentioned you by name and shouted you out personally. So I think it's really cool that I get a chance to sit down and chop it up with you. Yeah,
Drew, I love Drew, man. Drew's the man. Shout out to Drew. He just took first place in Emerald Cup with Rosin Tech this year, and I was proud of him and us really, because like when I had met Drew grew a lot of weed, and Drew's a total head, right? Just like us. I mean, the guy knows strains and knows genetics and profiles, and like he's a wizard with it. With growing, when I first met him, he was he had his a tent, and he was growing total fucking head. For hash and everything like that. And when I met him, he hadn't made hash before. And, I worked with him closely at Rosin Tech. I was doing a lot of the sourcing, and I was making hash in the beginning, but Drew really took over and started running the lab. And, I worked with him to like show him how to make solventless, and like, and he kind of had already a little bit of an understanding of everything from growing. And like, I think he had done some stuff on his own too. So, we kind of excelled there. And then when I left, he like, fuck, I mean, the dude's just killing it. He's making fire. The guy's a wizard over there with terps, and it's a real solventless sensei.
Yeah, he's doing good.
That's awesome. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about glass. I know from listening to another interview that you did that coming up, you spent some time working in head shops and we're around the glass community. Is there are you still drawn to the community, or was that something that was more a moment in time and not so much in the present day?
I'd say, I mean, a moment in time. Like I still appreciate it, but like when I was younger, getting a fucking sick new bowl you can smoke out of, or a bong was like, I do it all the time. And I had glass. I would always like get glass, and then I get tired of it real quick, and then I give it away to somebody. Like there's so many people out there I see, they're like, I still have this thing you gave me, and like I don't even remember the pipe. There's a few that I remember that I actually wish I kept, but so I always liked glass, but like I never really kept the attention to it. Like it never really like held on to its specialness after time of like just smoking through it. And like I don't know, but I did for a long time. Like I started out, I worked in a couple smoke shops in Connecticut coming up, like before I had through high school and stuff like that, and went to Champs and stuff as buyers like way back in the day, and had a lot of cool, like I have this Sherlock from Stevie P, like that's one of his early days, just a dry Sherlock pipe, and I hadn't even known it was a Stevie P back then. And then I'm like, as I'm now like, okay, I know artists, like I've been to all these shows, so I'm very familiar with these people, and I was like, oh shit, like I think I have one of these in like my dresser in my brother's house. And sure enough, I sent him a picture. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's one of like the first Sherlocks I put out." I was like, "That's like if you like glass, like that's a pretty dope piece to have." And then
that's cool.
Other shit, like we were working with like dudes like Hickory, I think Sherm, That was a while. That was like when I first got into glass and doing it. I think glass is so cool, but like I think Ryan Fitt puts out the dopest shit right now that's just clean. I really like the stuff, the work he does. But I don't like follow glass. I don't have a ton of pieces or anything. So
no, man, it's just something we like to ask every show. But switching gears again to something you do follow closely, like I want to talk about dabbing and hash. Were you first turned on to traditional hash, or was that something that didn't appeal to you whatsoever?
Like traditional hash, like hashish type of deal, like yeah. I mean, like we like back in the day, we would. I mean, if we could get it 100%, I used to get these like brown bricks with like gold Arabic writing on, and it was those were legit. We loved those. But really, like, we made bubble, we did all these things, but it wasn't like, I mean, you just put it in a blunt, and like that's how we smoked. We'd put it in a blunt, so it wasn't like the best representation of the product, really. And like,
you know, tasting heads or nothing.
Right. Yeah. So when butane first came out, that's when like we started like really dabbing, because that was like you got way higher. You had the flavor aspect of it.
And did you like your dabs red hot when you first started?
I didn't know any other way. If this shit wasn't red hot, fuck, it went out. I gotta heat it back up now.
You're like, dude, it's cool. It's cooled down. What the fuck are you?
Well, do you remember there was a thing about like seasoning your fucking nail? Where you're supposed to like throw a gram on there and just fucking let it go up, and then dunk it in water like it's a fucking pan for a steak.
Yep. Like scientists in white coats figured it out. They were like,
yeah. It was.
This is the way.
Well, I remember like I couldn't find anything to smoke hash of. Like when we had like when I had BHO and I was like starting to dabble all the time, they weren't rigs in the stores. Like you couldn't just go buy a rig. There wasn't swings like this shit. You wasn't at every smoke shop, let alone in fucking Connecticut. So like there's multiple times where I had to buy like a meth pipe to smoke BHO out of. That's the only thing that was like I was like, oh, that works. Like okay, I'm gonna look crazy, but
in a pinch,
everybody's got to get high.
In a pinch, it works. So I want to ask you a question. You did work at smoke shops. You're talking about smoking alternative different ways. Have you ever owned a nectar collector?
Yeah, of course. I had the nectar collector. I had the nectar collector, and what was the fucking? They still have it. The honey badger thing with I think it's like a ceramic tip. Yeah.
There's so many different ways people have fucking. When you first start, you don't know what the fuck's going on. You're like,
well, and it is crazy. Like if you like how you're gonna stab this hot nail into your jar, and then like you open your jar and it's like all melted in one area. It's like
everything's all decarb around it and destroyed.
Dude, for preserving hash now, it's like everybody's got a freezer or a cooler with them at all times, and to throw a fucking hot thing. I mean, what disrespect. It's like, yeah.
So when you started making BHO, is that when you really got into dabbing, or were you still kind of just doing it once in a while?
No, when we got into, I mean, I all but swore off. I swore off smoking flower again. I have asthma, so like when I started smoking dabs, it was like I was better for my asthma. Like I was getting higher. I wasn't getting as lethargic. Like. So that was it for me for a while. I go through phases even now where all I'll do is dab, or all I'll do is smoke. I won't dab for a fucking year, and then I'll get back into the rotation. So it's like, I started dabbing heavy though. That was like the only thing I wanted to do. That's why I was buying fucking meth pipes, because I didn't have any other option,
well, as long as you weren't kneeling behind a dumpster when you hit them, I think you're fine.
No. Only under the bridge.
Okay, that's your spot.
Yeah, it was back in the day. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But I started dabbing all the time, and I mean, when you start smoking weed after you dab, it's like just the carcinogen. You can disgusting. God. It's hard to get back into it.
Well, you start coughing, get you kind of like congested, and you get some weird shit every once in a while. But
yeah. When you dab a lot, I find the asthma gets affected. But blunts are like I love blunts. That's what I grew up on. I smoke backwoods now when I do. I'm gonna burn one in a sec, but it's fucking bad, dude. So it's you have to switch off every now and then.
Oh, for sure.
It's wicked bad.
All right. Yeah, you're more of a wicked northeasterner than me.
But haven't you been going up to New Hampshire or something like that?
Yeah, I got my father lived in New Hampshire, and we have a family lake house up there as well. So New Hampshire, like I grew up in Connecticut, but moved around and stuff, and my parents are passed. So it's like there's a house in New Hampshire that I consider home. So I guess New Hampshire would be home for me if I had to go back.
And that would qualify for wicked anything.
Yeah, it would. I was gonna say, because you're a little farther north you go, the wickeder it gets.
We're south of New Hampshire.
No, I know. I was thinking Connecticut.
Oh God, yeah.
Playing
I
both-
don't even know.
playing both
I don't know
fields.
anything. I honestly don't know anything about Connecticut except for the Hartford Whalers, and that's it.
Nobody does really. Connecticut keeps it quiet. Connecticut keeps it quiet, kind of like Oregon did in my mind. But it's cool, dude. Connecticut's beautiful. I fucking I'm based out of there now, so it's like
Yeah,
I do love it there, and it's pretty chill. I mean, you're right next to New York and Boston. Yeah. But I kind of like that nobody knows about it.
yeah. No, it's you're lucky to have that nowadays.
Yeah.
So was Rosin Technologies birthed from absorbing the information that Phil from Soil Grown Solventless put out, or did they have a rosin press well before that and were working on pushing that forward prior to that video coming out?
I'd have to ask them. It was Rosin Tech products too. Rosin Tech. There's Rosin Technologies, Rosin Tech products, and then Rosin. I don't know. There was another one that was very similar, but we were with Rosin Tech products was the original thing, and I honestly don't know how they found out. I believe it was that. Like, I mean, I think that's where everybody found out, and then like they started taking the theory of 2 heated plates and to squeeze out the rosin, and they actually started in Long Island, so. I have to assume from starting in Long Island, they saw a video and then thought a lot about it and started trying to get presses made and stuff like that.
So was rosin on your radar prior to connecting with the Rosin Tech products guys, or?
Oh, they sent me a press when I was in Oregon, and I thought it was dog shit. And I was like, rosin fucking sucks. But I didn't have the material. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was pressing flour. I think I was pressing trim at first, right? Because like that's when rosin first came out. It's like, what am I going to use? Well, I'm not going to use the good shit. I'm going to see what this gets me because we make BHO with trim and it comes out great. So, we're pressing bags of that and like not even making hash at that point to press. This was up in Oregon when I was doing, because I didn't get it really, the rosin thing at that point. And then the more I got to know them, and then like as things changed and I saw an opportunity and learned a little bit more, that's when I went down there. But yeah, at first I was like, I learned a majority about it from them, and like following Nicotine and Phil at that point. So I like knew about it and knew that like it could be really great. Like I was seeing the products they made, but like what I was making was fucking awful. So I didn't dig at first, man. It took a while.
It does,
how long were you looking at flour rosin until you started looking at hash rosin?
Pretty. I mean, it was dry sift rosin, because like we went to the trade shows, right? So like I pressed so much more rosin at trade shows than I ever did just like for my own. To like I was like making and selling BHO was my thing, because I would be able to do 100 pounds in a weekend by myself. I wasn't like making mass amounts of solventless by any means. So we'd go to these trade shows at like High Times Cups and stuff like that, and like you'd be running a press. It was actually really cool. It was like the best booth you could have ever had at a cup anywhere. Best ideas, like set up a bunch of rosin presses, all the growers there, bring all their shit, and you press it for them, right? So like we would have lines of people. It's a fucking 11-hour, 12-hour trade show, and you're standing on your feet in front of a rosin press, and there's a line of people with bags of like shopping bags full of weed, and like you work for them to like press all this. So we pressed fucking sift. Like people would bring pounds and pounds of sift. We just stuff filter bags and fucking get to work from flour. Some people brought hash, but like very, very few bought any full melt or any bubble at all. And when they did, it was like Moroccan hash, and you press out motor oil, and just be, I mean, black as the night. And then when dry sift and stuff would push out amazing, tons of yield, tons of great, which
gold.
The dry sift rosin market is totally underserved right now. But yeah, that was the first. It was just like dry sift, and like some flour would be great. Flour rosin I thought was a little better, because like it was fresher. If you had like people came in with like fresh flour they had just dried, like that was the best shit. So yeah, it was a lot of that until we got more into like setting up labs, and like I was meeting more people who had fresh frozen, and learning more about washing hash. And I really didn't start, like I've washed hash in I think like the first time maybe like 2013 or so. But like I didn't really get into processing hash until like 2018, like large scale ice water hash, with proper equipment and stuff. So it was a while for the dark ages with the rosin, with the flower rosin.
Well, it wasn't really the easiest thing for people to smoke for a long time either. And like flower rosin was sort of like the initial introduction, I think, to solventless to a lot of people. But then they started to see, if you're smoking flower rosin and then someone shows you some cold cure, fucking whipped up super dope cold cure, you're gonna be like, what? It could be the same fucking strain. And you're like, okay, let's go. It's so that's it all sort of evolved. And I think from you guys probably running around and pressing so much stuff and selling so many presses, it probably had a lot to do with the speed of how it evolved too. So that's kind of rad.
I hope so. I that'd be cool to be a part of that, because I mean, just being where it is now, I mean, solventless is it, dude. Like it's the pinnacle of hash and hash, all hash, BHO hash, everything. It's like this is top tier. It's the most unadulterated form of resin you can get. So it's it was cool, man. That was maybe the best time of my life. Those couple of years when we traveled to Spain, we were doing trade shows in like Cannabis, and like I felt so bad. People are like, "You speak Italian?" I'm like, "No Italian." Like Spanish? I was like, "No Spanish." They're like, all these things. I'm like, I speak English. Like that's all I got on me. So you have to like go through translators a lot of times to like explain how to make hash. And we did this a little bit in Colombia too when I went down there, teaching people rosin and shit like that. And so that was the coolest thing. Is like you're speaking to a translator, talking to somebody else, and you're having this very like this guy's blown away, right? And you're teaching him so much and translating it through somebody. Just being able to communicate, not being able to speak the language was a special thing. And like, they brought. I had some of the best weed in Spain from these guys in France that were just like, perfect blunts. This shit was amazing.
So nice.
Yeah,
that's a very cool. That must have been a very cool experience to have, like translating that information. Having like it's cool when you get to see, in the smoking circles outside of weed conferences and stuff. A lot of information gets passed, and you get to see these younger heads get their minds blown by older heads. But like to see it with a translator in between it, I think would be even cooler. I think that'd be cool. There'd be like
one of the coolest. It's a delay on it, and it's just like I don't know. There's something about like blowing somebody's mind where they're like learning this new thing about weed. Like if you're into weed and like you learn how to make hash and how to get higher or how to make something like better weed, like you're always on the hunt for better weed. That's like this whole industry is like, what's the next best weed, and sort of like teach people that is cool, and just see their eyes light up. Somebody says something you don't understand, and they say something, and they're like, oh, and you're like, oh, you just got it, you just understood. Like I don't know, it was a cool thing. I remember. I went down to Colombia because we have a license. Their show has a license down there, Rosin Tech, and we were looking at farms and stuff like that. And we was on a weed farm in Colombia, which was in its own right wild. And I'm talking to these guys. They're like the native Colombian people, and who are like the farmers down there in like Southwest Colombia. It's crazy. And they have this rosin. They made their own rosin press, so they like knew about it. They had like. They heard it somewhere. And this is, you're in third world country, like it's crazy. The area I was in, it's like a lot of, not all of it. But anyway, they have this whole rosin press, and it's a jack. The whole press from the top to the bottom heats up to whatever temperature you set it at. So you have to handle the whole thing with gloves. Like it just got out of like the entire press. You can't touch it, otherwise it would be steaming hot. The fucking arm press, the whole like the two plates, which was like looked like sheet metal, and like everywhere you could grab it was fucking 200 degrees or whatever it was. So like I was translating with them and teaching them how to make like dry sift with all of their trim because they're growing mountains full of weed. So I'm translating to these people, and that was really cool. Just on a mountainside in Colombia, teaching these guys how to make hash and press it into rosin, and like kind of blowing their minds. And it was like that was a special moment for sure.
How did the strains look? How were the yields? How were these things that you saw when you were there
in Colombia?
What was the product? Yeah, what was the product looking like? Finished product?
It wasn't good. Like it's so different down there. They're in a tropical climate, and they're like. It's hard for them to grow weed that's, like it is up here that would even wash well, right? So it's like their game is dry sift when they, and brown hash is like they don't give a shit if it's dark. You know what I mean?
No.
Like if they can make hash, they're happy. So it wasn't like anything spectacular, but they were, we were pressing a lot of flour with them and like teaching them. They didn't have anything to make dry sift there really, so we didn't get to make a whole lot. It was just kind of pressing rosin with their fresh flour and everything. But the flower, like as it's growing down there, like on the plant, I think there's a picture in my Instagram. There's one shot has a couple slides that you can see where like on the farm, and the plants are small and they're good. But the way they dry it is just fucked up, and you're in such a humid climate. They had like this shack, and they had like an exposed electrical wire going around the bottom, and that was like supposed to heat it up and dry it out in there. It was like you're on the side of a mountain, you know what I mean? There's no like getting power up there is like a rare, almost not a thing, let alone lights and whatever you need. You got to hike a trail. Like it's not, you know, that's what they had. So it's like, you know, and that's why it's like what type of hash they're not trying to make bubble hash down there. They're not interested in that. It's, you know, the dry sift shit like that. But it was funny that, you know, you're down there in 2019 or whatever, or maybe probably earlier than that, 2017, 18. Anyway, they didn't know any of this. You know what I mean? You're like, I thought hash is known everywhere, and these guys have the X, and then they had no idea what to even do with that stuff. So,
I wonder where they're at today after, you know, giving them that sort of insight at that point. They're probably in the internet.
The same
they're
farm.
probably well on their way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I don't know. That was like a. Yeah, I don't know if that would be able to get to. This is a one-off thing. I think I have to talk to Felix and see how the farm's going down in Colombia. But they got a farm started growing. I want to say it was 2 years ago, but I haven't spoken to him in a while. So I have to.
Oh, that's cool.
Talk to him.
And that's their contact that they had there in Colombia.
Yeah, Felix, Mr. Llanos, he's the man.
Nice.
Where do you feel solventless is strongest overseas as far as a brain trust of individuals in a country?
I mean, Barcelona, for sure. Like that's an easy answer. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like, yeah. But if you couldn't say Barcelona, is there Italy? I mean, Italy and France. Like the guys I met from Italy and France have had like the best weed I saw in Europe. But maybe London, just because it's like has, you know, there's clubs popping up all over Europe too, and like in London when I was there, you know, 3 years ago there was a few. So it's like maybe it was longer. Yeah, it was maybe 4 years ago. They had clubs in London, like weed clubs, just like they have in Barcelona. And it's like, oh, okay, like this thing's really, they're everywhere. They're taking off. It's all over Europe. So I don't know. I'd say Barcelona, or if I can't say Barcelona, maybe London.
I know Amsterdam has a pretty big scene when it comes to.
Well, who's the dude in England, the English cut? Like that dude's fucking, you know, he produces fire. If you don't know, if you haven't seen him, he's the man in Europe, dude. He grows fire, washes himself. He's great.
That's where it's at.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered cured material or a cultivar that you would rather consume the resin from cured material than that same material fresh frozen?
Ooh, that's a good question. I never really thought about that. Maybe sour. I think like sour as like that's just particular to me. Like I grew up on smoking sour diesel in Connecticut, which is like the New York, you know, I think it's the AJ's cut as far as I've always had it. And there's just something special about that. And like the live plant and the dry and the dried and cured plant have that different profile. I'm like, I'm looking for what I grew up on, and that would have to be dried and cured. So, but that's kind of like that. I've never really had the pleasure to like wash that right now or like process that into solventless even. So that's like that's my one I'm chasing there, if you will.
Have you had a better representation of sour in BHO or solventless in your whole life?
BHO for sure. But again, I haven't been able to process solventless like AJ's cut sour. I have in BHO, but I gotta imagine it'd be better in solventless in my mind for sure. But it
yields. I know that.
Well, I've heard it yields like 6%, but that like the profile on it's strange and hash. Like I find we've made a ton of sour in BHO, and if you don't store it properly, which you know it wasn't a thing a while ago, like it goes rank on you for some reason. Like the terps change. Like even if you leave it out too long and like it starts to oxidize, like it gets worse than other strains when they oxidize. And it's just like it's a fragile, to me it's like a fragile thing to like keep that full sour profile. Like there's a full like creamy and sour and gassy component to it that like if one of those goes away, it's not quite that profile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like soily and weird.
Yeah, and so it gets kind of rank. So it's like you got to be very.
It has a living component to its scent, which is odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some other profiles that you found incredibly hard to capture on the solventless side?
Anything lemons pretty hard. That's why like that lemon dog shit from Ice House was fire. Like it's hard to find like lemon OG, like the terps like that. Like I don't know. It's the lemon definitely, and hazes for some reason. Like hazes are hard to like. Haze used to, it's grown all over Europe. They've made tons of hash with it for years, but like processing that into solventless, fresh frozen, using like a piff or something like that, which is like again something I grew up on that I love and would kill to see in like a complete full melt or even a rosin. Like that profile is different than everything that's out right now. That's all these cookie mashups and runts and this and gelatos. It's like it's very monotone, and like those are the polar opposites. So it's, I think because they're the polar opposites, like, and I haven't really seen them a lot in solventless. These are 100-day flowering strains, some of them, right? Like if you can get the Neville's like that profile too, the mangoes like into a melt or a rosin, I think that would fucking kill it. So those are, I mean, I've processed a few hazes, and like every time it's not great, but every cultivar is a little different. You find the grower who knows how to work it, like that changes the game. You know what I mean? So it's about access to that material. Now nobody grows haze. Again, they're 100-day flowering strains. It's like it's hard enough to make money. You know what I mean? Now you got to make it twice. Now you got to make it twice as less.
Do you feel that taking something like cookies and cream and crossing it into a narrow leaf equatorial, and then trying to find progeny that fit within, the confines of 9 or 10 week windows, no matter what you find within those confines, it won't be that same specialness that 100-day varietal is? Or do you think that genetics are such that we might have the opportunity to reap all the rewards of 100 days at 70 days?
Yeah, for sure. Because like it's evolved. Like, I mean, people are breeding for all sorts of things now, and particularly solventless. And like, there's Haley Piff right now, which I think there's a dude in New York growing it. My friend Black Rabbit Farm on Instagram, he's grows amazing Haley Piff, and it's like the super silver, and it smells like GMO. It's got like super silver and that gas like OG kind of funk to it. And it's just like I never thought you'd be able to blend those two types of strains, and it's like people get lucky with that. You know what I mean? Breeding is something I don't even want to try to comment on because it's in depth, and I don't really know shit about it. But I have faith that people are gonna keep evolving things and getting innovated with breeding strains specific for solventless, because it's such the dominant it's the superior hash in the market. So it's like it is the creme of the creme, and people are going to cater to that. So I think you'll find a time where it's you're going to have all sorts of different profiles in solventless that are just going to be hitters every time. Like you're seeing now, there's way more 4, 5, 6 % washers and stuff around the market than there used to be, and it's like that's people are breeding for that, they're harvesting for that. You know what I mean? That's a big component too. Like how, like it's not just the genetic, but like how do you treat that plant, the whole fucking thing. So I think we'll get there, but I don't know in what time.
What are your thoughts on freeze dried versus air dried resin when not factoring in a commercial bottleneck that one presents very much so over the other? Do you feel as though a perfectly air dried resin is better, the worse, or the same as that same resin put through a freeze dryer?
I don't know. I feel like I've done a lot more freeze dried hash. It's so much easier doing it the dried way. Like my theory of manipulating resin or making hash is like the less processing you can do, right? Single if you're doing butane, like a single pass butane, not like single pass butane and curing it properly, rather than throwing it through different chemicals or filtering it or manipulating it in some way. Like that single pass. And same thing with solventless is where it's as you do to it, the better. So freeze drying it is manipulated. You're putting in these trays. You're putting in extremely low temperatures, which may not be good for the heads. You're putting in it, having it, the trays heat up to 45 degrees or so. So you're just throwing the resin through more ups and downs. So if you can just put it through to a non-freeze dried hash, just regular, air dried, I think that is superior. I think that's way harder to do though. And the people who do it, like, you have to let it dry in like a 40-degree environment. Like, how long it takes to dry in 40 degrees? It's fucking ridiculous. It's going to dry forever. So, most people don't have those patience. But I think if you can do it that way, I think it would be superior. But I like freeze-dried hash is not far behind as far as quality-wise. So it's like,
Do you see a renaissance of air-dried hash with guys like Simply Adam and others doing it? Or do you think that the margin of difference is so thin that right now it's not something that the market would reward for?
I don't think there's enough connoisseurs to know the difference or to care really. I think there will be, like, this solventless hash is so intricate. I mean, with flavors like similar to how wine and people nerd out with different tannins or however that, I don't know anything about wine, but people go into detail with it. You know what I mean? And there's very nuances to every flavor profile. And there's very nuance to like how it was processed by who and what farm, living soil. Like, there's so many nuance to it. And having a space for that type, I think absolutely. But I think the market as a whole, more states need to legalize and like push solventless as a whole to, have more people do it, more people innovating, more people marketing it well. And so we get every consumer gets a better understanding of the intricacies of solventless. Because right now it's like we can have this conversation on like why we like one terp over the other and why we want to smoke or try or why we want to smoke Simply Adam and those other freeze dried hashes. Like, if I can find that, like, I'll buy that every time. It's like, oh cool, like non-freeze dried, like this is just another variable that's like just fire hash, made in a different way. There's those nuances. I think there's going to be a lane for it. It's a niche though. It's like, are you going to charge more? Or like, what's the, you have to help educate the consumer, I think, on that.
Yeah. I think what helps get it out there though is if people do try it in comparison to anything else they try, they're like, what the fuck is this? But even if you looked at like a gram of, what is it? Like, the Percy sauce, that kind of, any kind of jelly or sauce, some people might think that's BHO and they wouldn't know the difference, but so you have to kind of educate them on some of it. But
yeah, it's like, who knows who's actually going to notice the difference when you're smoking and be able to like actually give you an educated description on why one's better than the other. A lot of people just be like, yeah, well, this one, like they don't actually know or appreciate it. You have to be a real hash nerd to be like recognizing the differences and like pointing it out, which is like, there's a market for that. That's what we're all like, being like, check this one out. It's the same fucking strain we've been smelling for 12 years. And you're like, check it out again, because it has that note, or it's like, it is dried like that. And it's like, it's a little different. It's a little more exciting.
Yeah.
I want to ask about your thoughts on fresh pressed versus cold cured rosin. Where did your preferences lay?
I think I like the cold cure always. Usually, it's cold cure. Like, it sharpens up the terp profile a little bit. Like, it's like it hits a certain profile, but it's also like, I don't know, fresh. Yeah, cold cure. I'm not gonna pussy around it. Cold cure for sure.
Do you think that there'll be more fresh press, the same amount of fresh press, or less fresh press in the legal California market 3 years from now?
I think there's going to be less, and it's going to be more expensive because they're going to be like, oh, it's fresh pressed. Cold cure is like, maybe it won't be more expensive, but I think there'll be far less of it. It's harder to keep fresh. It's a pain in the ass to get fresh pressed into a jar with nice, like, it's not a pain in the ass, but like, you have to be very careful and like keep it cold the whole time. Otherwise, if it starts battering up, like,
what are you doing for what?
Way harder to do. And there's going to be more like bulk suppliers and stuff too. You know what I mean? Like, there's the quality, I think, overall of hash will go down. Yeah. Like in the legal market, just because like, it's going to get mass produced and it's harder just to control those variables. And people are going to be outsourcing it, how they store it. Everything's going to be in cold cure. And it's like, listen, cold cure I like better, but like if you don't take care of it and it becomes some dry hash, like that's far worse. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, it's like fresh press and melt both have that challenge, which is that they have to be kept at a certain temperature. you know, for storage, for transport, because it's a place and time. That's really what the fuck it is. Like when you have melt and it's all beautiful and it hasn't greased up yet, it's just at a place and time. Same thing as you know, fresh press. Yeah. And honestly, I think they're better when they have some time to sort of settle and, you know, even out and gas out and cure.
Well, it is. I mean, it's cold cured, right? Like you're curing it. It has time for that profile to develop.
Yep.
And it's like having melt. Like it is sweet to like have melt, and you know it comes in frozen. It's still powder, and then you let it melt in your own pocket, and you see it go from that sand to the clear, however melty it is. You know what I mean? And that's the real test. It's like, what did I just get? All right, cool. Put it in the pocket for a few minutes. Yeah, and then you're like, oh, like that's part of the experience of consuming that is like understanding this resin. Like, what's the product you're buying? It's a bunch of these, you know, resin glands that like, you know, essentially looks like caviar, that they're like frozen grapes, and then all of a sudden at room temperature they melt together. Like, I don't know, like I nerd out like, oh, that's just like how dope is that? Like that's great hash. You know what I mean? Like, and then you get to be part of that melting experience. You understand a little bit better on why it is what it is and why you pay so much for that product. It's cool.
Yeah, no, like some of the quarter grams and half grams from Legends that were melt, if they sat in your pocket, they just turned to rosin.
Yep.
They were that clean. It was crazy.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's like to me, that's like the perfect you can absolutely get, right? It's like ice water hash based on like qualities based on cleanliness, right? How can you get just trichome glands? Absolutely nothing else. Even the stalk is contaminated. And like it's impressive when you see that. It's like you can't get better than that in my mind. That's like the best hash, BHO hash, whatever, solventless hash, anything. Melt that does that is the perfect representation of the strain or the material that you use to make it.
Yeah. No, that's like every maker's dream though, to be able to separate it to that point and have the right input. But I think, I mean, in the hash game right now, I think everyone's learning like, hey, if you have the right equipment and you get the right inputs and you follow the right process, you can have really good hash. And
I think it's all about that input material, man. I mean, like, you know, the input and like just knowing how to preserve it, knowing how to like manipulate the resin and manipulate that gland so you don't disturb it. How do you keep those glands whole and intact until, you know, melts in your pocket like we're talking about and delivered to the customer? And like that's the real skill in it. And again, like it's really like the grower creates the quality, the hash maker accentuates it. All we're doing is separating those trichome glands that the grower grew. You know what I mean? It's like and that's why it's like I don't want to manipulate that at all. So like to like freeze drying to air drying, it's like, well, air drying is like that's not manipulating that gland as well. It also won't melt in your pocket, so you don't get that aspect. But you know, it's like so technically in my mind, like that's the less you're manipulating it, that'll probably be a better hash because it's unadulterated resin. You know what I mean? And that's why solventless is, because it's the most unadulterated. We're not dissolving everything in a chemical and then it recoagulates like this goop. Like what the fuck even is that? You know, this makes sense. You're separating that head. Like Anyway, rambling on about heads.
Oh, not at all.
You're in good company.
I'm about to build on it. So clearly being a fan of melt, what are your thoughts on what's happening as far as the medicinal or the differences of the sensory experience from smoking rosin to melt? Like, what do you feel is happening there?
I mean, it's all about flavor, really. Like, I don't think it's like a difference in high, really. I think it is a difference in high, actually, a little bit. But it's not like, it's a fraction of it's hard to notice. It's like, just, again, I feel like it's the nuanced shit. You know what I mean? I like melt better because, again, it's just a more direct representation. Like, it's like, if you make rosin, like, that's because the melt's not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, so but also they're just different, and like they're both good in their own right. I don't want to give you like a fucking wishy-washy answer. Nope. It sounds like but again, it all comes down to like, well, if I can't choose on like what's the better quality, because like it's a different representation of the profile, so I have to go down to, well, technically, for my beliefs on like what hash should be, well, melt is a superior product. But again, like,
but it's all strain specific.
Yeah.
So that's what everyone has to understand. one strain is not going to do what another strain does. Some of them all do the same thing, but there are some that are like, fuck you. I've got this, this flavonoid that's binded with my active compound that makes me dark. I've got this, I've got that. And there's all these different fucking things. And you may figure out how to isolate that micron that has that mostly in it because of its size that's visual. Yeah. There's all these different things that fucking happen that people, and that's why I love, like you were talking earlier about like, separating and kind of doing this thing and making hash. What do you think the future, or sorry, I know what it was. I was talking about inputs. And I know that as hash makers in California, there are challenges for inputs. But it seems like you had a great relationship with Sean, and that was one way. But what are some of those challenges? Do you remember what some of those are working in the California market?
Oh, finding it first off. I mean, it's really hard to find like the top tier ice, like top tier fresh frozen to make melt is very hard to find. And like a lot of plants out there, a lot of people are growing fantastic material for solventless, but they fuck everything up during harvest and storage. And like, they just like material gets compacted, material's not like weighed out properly. Like it's just a mess. You know what I mean? Rather like it's gotta like, just like if, everything's compacted in California. Like you can't get weed that's like fresh frozen. That's just a bag of weed with loose material in there, just like a bag of weed you would smoke. That's how your like fresh frozen that you get should look. And like that's lost on a lot of growers and distros, unfortunately, that are, they've got margins. They're trying to pack product in. They're trying to like do things efficiently. So it's this fucking game between hash maker and farmer and sorcerer being like, I need it like this. You know what I mean? I need it like trichome heads, like undisturbed, and being very gentle with it. It's not so it's hard. I think that it's just the transport and the harvest and the storage people have and the amount they need to produce. Like I know plenty of small guys who have all the freezer space in the world and like freeze things properly, take their time to do it. They care a little bit more about the product. So it's like, and we're talking about a mass business game here. There's huge farms that you have to be big to succeed almost. It's like, it's either grow or die type of deal in California. So it's getting harder and harder to like find people who want to take the time and extra dollars to put it into that product, as so that it's all about sourcing. Again, it's all about like, you can know all the best farms. And like, I love that thing you said, or you had on your Instagram a while ago, Addison, is like, this game's about access. Almost everything is about like, who do you have access to? You know what I mean? Or what farm material you have
getting
access to. Getting access, right? And then like fucking taking care of it. Again, like the trichome on the plant is fucking perfect. It's not undisturbed. We chop that thing down, put it in a bag, like it gets messed up, and some are more fragile than others. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and then like how you grow it, how you package it, like are they super dense nugs? Are they like so there's a lot of variables in finding the right products. Awesome weed just doesn't wash sometimes for various reasons. Yeah. But I think a lot of times is in storage. That's why like single source guys are always like, oh, single source is the best. Well, yeah, because it's not being stored and like tossed around. Like it's going from your farm right to your, your garage to where you're going to wash it. It's like, it's not getting messed up, of course.
It's like super loved. Yeah.
Right. Like, and also like freshly harvested weed is usually like goddamn beautiful. You put it in a bag, you start tossing it around, it starts looking like balls, and it's, it's at the end of the day, now it's okay. Now it's second grade.
You put too much of it in a bag. Like I think what the problem is in California that I've seen most commonly is that these farms are big. So anything why would I put 1,000 grams in one bag?
Yeah.
The bag
that's like 1,000 grams.
These bags can hold. Yeah. These bags can hold 6,000 grams, so I fill them with 3, and it's like,
well, that's the disconnect
1,000 fucking grams. Yeah.
Well, and that's what Sean. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I keep talking.
That's where what I was getting to is like, that's probably one of the reasons why when it comes to the partnerships that you are going to have as a maker, it's a cool ass partnership because the maker's able to educate the farmer a bit and step them up on their game, and vice versa. And, and once they are able to, I think the point is once they are able to capture it correctly, bucket correctly, and store it correctly, it's so much easier for the maker to get an understanding of what's really there, and that's the other thing is like, Ben's right. Like if you're going to chop up and put some fresh rosin, make some fresh rosin and freeze it up, you should just put 1,000 grams in a bag. That's like the best way to do it, because if that bag freezes by the time you get the next bags in, then they make these little rocks that kind of protect themselves. Whereas if that bag has a lot of weight in it and it can press all that weight into itself, it starts to make it really hard to get all those active compounds and all those heads unfucked with out of that mess that you made with all that pressure and all that weight. And that's why, like, 30-pound bags, 25-pound bags, even 15, I think even like 10 or 15-pound bags, they make it makes it pretty tough. Like it starts to make it harder, I think, for the processor. And then you get the bigger the bag, the heavier the material, you start to get these surface areas around the side where the bag presses, and it's just a rock all the way around. So now you have a tubular thick rock too, which kind of fucks everything up. But
I agree absolutely 100%. And like even smaller bags, like 1,000 grams at the max, right? Because it's not just like, oh, the pressure and like where is it in the bag, but like how are they harvesting that? How quickly do you chop the plant and get 100 grams into that bag and into the freezer, right? Because when you chop down a plant, that bud is like go to a live plant, squeeze that bud, like it's a dense bud. Like even smaller buds, they're all rigid and like spongy and like they're tough. They're like, so but as you cut it down, now they get spongy and flat. Like when you hang it up and you go grab a bud that's like drying, it's just been drying for a few hours, and you touch it, it's super soft, right? So it's like losing that moisture, that like stiffness in itself. So if you can cut, a few buds off, put it in a, fresh frozen 400 grams is like, 100 grams, maybe less, it's like 2 ounces in a bag. So you're cutting 2 ounces off a plant, putting it in a bag and freezing that right away. Like you're freezing the bud at a better time when it has more fucking structure and strength
vigor
to it. Like it just got cut down. It's more vigor, and it's like holding the resin glands better, because once that plant gets soggy, it's like everything starts to fold in on itself again. Like when the plant's live, that trichome head is perfect. So like you want to put that live plant in a small bag that you can identify that live plant later. If you have these massive bags, just a brick of weed, and you're just like, but like if you see actual buds and everything's floating around loose, like it's undisturbed. It's
well, like you said before, it should look like a bag of weed that's dry, that's coming to you, that you're gonna smoke. That's right. How it should look. It shouldn't be completely pressed like it got smuggled across the border. So
right. That's surprisingly hard to find too.
We're seeing
but that's where, like, to answer one of your other questions, like with Sean, like we went up there, like, I have a great relationship with Sean, and we saw eye to eye, and we were able to, like, talk about weed in a certain way and certain profiles that we appreciate, and we looked at it a certain way. So it's like that was easy, and like we understood each other on like what we're looking for. And he's the wizard to be able to grow things in the way that produces better and better resin. Like over time, he's been just doing better and better. And like, I don't know if it's us working together. I mean, he works with a lot of people, and he just grows great material. So like, and he understands it. He loves hash, so he understands that. That sand in the jar in your pocket in 20 minutes, you being able to see it grease up is like part of that. Like, look at how good it is every time you smoke. So that's what made that easy.
That helps. That helps a lot.
And like, if you could have a relationship with every farm like that and have them understand, or have them like be passionate about it as well, like then you're in business. But there's a lot of people out there to make money, and rightfully so. Like that's what everybody's doing. So,
Absolutely, bro. We're seeing a tremendous rise in resin mixing, taking cups, winning things like Legends, winning things like Emerald Cup, Ego, and definitely something that you're clearly a big proponent of. I want to know, do you think that we're going to continue to see a rise in resin blending? And do you think it's going to become more commonplace than having just a single source offering very quickly?
Like blending different hashes together and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because like there's a limited number of strains out there that wash really well and give you like a unique, aggressive profile of terps, you know what I mean, that really represent the strain well. So like, blending stuff is going to get cool. And like, say you have two different types of hash. You've got a papaya and a GMO, and like, cool, I can sell papaya, I can sell GMO, but now you can also kind of sell garlic juice. You know what I mean? Like, so, and again, like this is about like producing a lot of products. As the market gets bigger and bigger and more companies enter, there's going to be more products, and there's going to be so much blends happening, because there is a limited supply of material that processes in the economics and metrics that work in a business to actually sell on the legal market, with all the other taxes and other inputs that go into getting a gram of rosin out on the market. So I think that like doing blends like that makes sense. And like, if you're good at it, like, cool. Like, that's really fucking cool to be able to do a blend and like make a dope hash. Like banana milkshake was a blend. You know what I mean? Like, and I blended the fresh frozen, washing that, and then, having the hash come out, not like blending two hashes together. You know what I mean? Now, if you're making rosin, now you can blend 2 different ice waters together and make a rosin with that too. It's like, where do you do the blend? It's like, again, it becomes a cool little variable of like, okay, like understanding how the product we made. And I think connoisseurs are really into that. People who are judging right now, and like us, like people who are about it are really fucking about it and like love those nuances things, because there kind of is a limited supply of like fire rosin, especially fire melt on the market. Like, you can't find fire melt anywhere. It's very hard to get like.
Yeah, it's a lot more rare than people think. It's like, it's definitely one of those things that like, and you know why? I honestly think is that because it doesn't travel very well. It's like your 96-year-old grandmother. Like, it doesn't fucking travel well, man. Like, you can't just like, you have to have a whole setup with fucking everything ready to go in order for that to get around. And that's the truth of the matter, man. Like, it's because when you see it is in the lab, when a homie's like, oh, come over here, and there's a big freezer and fucking look at this jar, and they're like, don't open it for fucking 20 minutes, and it's like, and you finally get to open. There's like 9 of them lined up, and you're like, oh.
And then as soon as you look at it, somebody smells it, they're like, all right, give it back. I gotta go put it in the freezer.
It's got to go back in the freezer. And then honestly, the truth of the matter is, that's fucking $18,000. Like the big ones, the 400s. That's fucking 17, 18 grand going back.
Well, you think about it.
10 grand at least.
I mean, you think about like, I've had 2,000 grams of like melt, right? When you're like straight up melt that, like in the retail stores would go for $100 a gram. Like, do the math. I'm like, what this in this jar, what the dollars for this jar that would get, and you're like, I have fucking 2 hands and like carry that thing like a baby over the shelf or wherever you're storing it. It's scary to have that much,
You like slide your feet. You're like, slide my feet, slide my feet.
Yeah.
No, it's expensive stuff, man. It is.
Yeah, it is, and it is like you hit the nail on the head, dude. It is about traveling. It is. It really, like, that shit doesn't travel well. That's why people have coolers, and like, it's tough. It's like you have to have it at home. Put it in the freezer. I saw somebody with some garlic juice melt that we had one with the rosin with the other day, and it was still powdery, and I was like, what? It was like, you still have this sitting around like this? Like, you must have not kept the freezer door open for too long.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, think of it this way: if you're out and about and you don't have a freezer with you, and you purchase some melt from someone that has a freezer, it's going to be fucking greased by the time you get it back to wherever you go. Yeah. Unless you live in Milwaukee and it's fucking negative whatever degrees, and you just throw it up on the dashboard of your pickup truck. But like, that's not what we're talking about here. This shit is, like I say, it's a place and time, bro, and it's on the move.
What about even? I mean, not even that, but if it tips upside down, you know what I mean? Now it's like, how do I keep this thing straight up in my bag? And like, what a pain in this. We used to have these jars that had like a swinging ball inside. So if you put it in your bag, the idea was like, that it would always stay fucking upright. It was really cool. I think somebody's got to get one of those made. But yeah, even traveling with that shit. It's I was looking into, there's these like I think they're made to like carry insulin or whatever, but it's like a little freezer like this big. And I was like, the hash game needs something like that. Just to carry around terps and everything, you can make sure it's upright, but a little to go fucking cooler.
Refrigerated
at this point. If you want melt,
candy pack. Who's doing it?
I like it. Thank God for people with insulin problems. These beautiful creations to come about.
So, Ben, I wanted to ask you, in your experience, if you've noticed any differences between salt grown and organically fed material. Has that been something that you've been able to look apple to apple and see any notable differences?
No, I haven't gotten that deep with it. I can't give you a straight answer on that. But like, I do know that like my buddy uses GH, and it's some of the best fucking weed I've seen anywhere I've been. It's like he grows some of the best fucking weed, and it's like most people wouldn't touch GH with a stick, but. So I got nothing against it, man. I like good weed, and I don't discriminate on that a little bit. I mean, it's always nice to see something in living soil or fed organically. I but I like good weed, so I don't really.
In your time consulting, have you spent a lot of time around some of these more commercialized hash machines like the Hash Tech or the Axis or the Osprey or the Icon?
I've been trying to spend some time with the Icon. Like, I think all the machines are like they'll get you there, but certain operations are kind of strange, and like how you're moving around it, and how you're working the actual machine. How do you train it and clean it out? Like sometimes lost on a lot of people who are manufacturing machines sometimes, and there's a learning curve with every machine. You got to do a few tweaks to like keep your yields and stuff like that up. I haven't played with as much as I'd like to, of course, but I do think that the Axis is probably the best one in my opinion at the moment, just for understanding how it's used and ease of use, and like how I understand hash. Like I like that because it's very similar to a hand wash, which is like tried and true. Like I know what I'm getting every time I do a hand wash. When I have a paddle in the hand or I teach someone else how to use a paddle, like I know what we're getting every single time. You know what I mean? I know the yields are what they're supposed to be because I'm working it. You know what I mean? And then they put it in a machine and you get half the yield. And it's like, oh fuck, okay. There's this learning curve. You got to spend maybe some months and material and a lot of money to figure out how to get those same yields. And does that machine like work? Is it functional in a lab when making hash? You know what I mean? Like the Icon's a great machine. Like if you use it in a certain way. So is like Whistler Tech. I'm sure would be a great machine. I think Whistler Tech throws the material around in a lot of ways, but again, like depending on application. But I would really like, I guess that was the one I would really like to see because it is the biggest, and like the goal for everybody is like, how much can you do? So I'm like, how can you get the biggest one? Like, and it's pretty automated. Like it's washing and draining all at the same time, all the time. And it's like, I don't know. It's really cool to see everything develop. But I think the Axis would be the one I'd like the most.
Do you still feel that there's a ceiling between commercial extraction machines in the solvent space versus hand washing, or do you feel that properly run the Axis can produce material, produce a output product that is on par with a hand wash?
Yeah, they can do that for sure. Like machines can definitely put out products that are on par. I do think that like hand wash, I do believe you can get a little better, and like the metrics work. Like I think like if you do a hand wash, like the metrics, like the money is there to warrant doing it. You know what I mean? And you have the ability to create a much higher quality product. You can control your variables and you get skilled operators rather than machine operators. And that makes a better product at the end. But machines cut it real close. Like for 80%, 70% of the market, like I don't think they would care or notice a difference. Like tons of fire rosin out there made with tons of machines, hash too. So it's just a learning curve.
Do you see any innovations coming in the rosin press specifically? We're seeing a lot of tipping happening. We're seeing a lot of presses that are hooked up 4 at a time, and they all operate on the same pump. Do you see any more innovation, or do you think that we're going to be working with what we currently have for the foreseeable future?
I don't know. I think there's much room to improve. Running 4 presses at once is not ideal, and like I don't see it happening soon, but I do see like way more efficient processing happening. I do think that like the presses we have now can make like the highest quality that like maybe is available to make. You know what I mean? Like I don't see how we're getting, better than what we're doing now. I do see like maybe there's a theory of, lowering the micron to like 1 micron. There's crazy machines out there. You can do anything, and like what you're going to filter your hash and rosin through, and how it heats up, and what colors. Like using bags, using parchment paper, like not really the ideal to be like packing filter bags and folding in a piece of parchment and making sure it doesn't fall off the plate. And you're like, fucking, you want to dump hash in, have it go down, and make your rosin, right? Like in a perfect world. And so I do think that like rosin presses, they won't look like rosin presses. It might be like a cylindrical thing. I don't know. There's tons of theories out there that I would love to see happen. I think that the only way you can get like really better quality of those maybe lowering that micron level and being able to lower your heat that you're applying. But then like how is that forcing the resin out of the trichome glands? Like, I don't know. I think it would just be, it's an interesting thing to try out. But lowering the micron to like 5 or 1 micron, what impurities does that hold back? You know what I mean? Does that let actual resin, seep out in a different purity? Is it less inerts in there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like some sort of a cylinder with a piston.
Yeah, like I would say, like imagine like a frit disc on the bottom of something. Everything would heat up, and just like pouring it out of that, like and having just a drip of like I don't know, giving away secrets right now. But that's like
be raining.
Yeah, just put some material in there. The whole thing, like, why are we using bags and paper? Like, I feel like we have like once that's the next step to go away. But I think it's like a tough thing to do without jeopardizing the quality. I think that people will do it and like it's going to suck at first, but it'll produce a bunch of mass-produced rosin at very low, labor costs, and then it's like makes sense for the business. Yay! And now you have solventless whatever you want by using that press. But if you want highest quality, like there's smaller machines, skilled operators, and like the Pikes Peak or whatever, like there's tons of good presses out there. That actually there's not a ton, but that is good.
What are your thoughts around dry sifting? Do you think we're kind of seeing a renaissance a little bit? And are you a fan of it? Do you think it has a commercial application?
Yeah, I do. I don't think it does like with the current equipment. Like I think it's drastically overlooked. You know what I mean? Like Cuban makes fire sift, right? Sift that goes on par with any melt you would see out there. And it's like, well, if we can accomplish that with sift and like trim and like what are we doing washing with fresh frozen shit? Like it's but it's dried and cured material. So and I think like it can be a mass produced product that can like you can take a bunch of sift that you make with like let's say you're tumbling with a 180, 150 micron screen and getting a bunch of sift, like being able to clean that up, like ooh, all right, that's really appealing because there's, you clean it up with static. Like, why is there a static machine out there that's lifting resin glands right out of the sift? Like, why doesn't that exist? Because when it does, now this value rosin lane is opened up and nobody's serving a value rosin. Everything's 100 grams, $80 a gram, and it's getting lower and lower. It's getting harder and harder to make money selling high-end rosin, so all the quality is going down. But now you come in with something like sift that's a very low, very low cost of entry to make, probably the lowest in solventless concentrates to sell. Why isn't that more mass produced? Well, it's harder to get better quality. It's harder to clean up sift. But if you start incorporating like a static tech or something like that on a mass scale, I think that would be fucking change the game of value rosin.
Yeah, I mean to see a sift that's dabbable, it's pretty. To get it cleaned up to the point where it actually is dabbable is one thing. But I love like a blonde bar. Well,
not only that, but you can get it.
Bar hash, like that shit's fire.
Well, cleaning it up to make rosin too with it is my main thing. You know what I mean? Like you're pressing when you press sift rosin, like there's so much other particulate that your resin's going through that's degrading your resin as you're pushing it out of the press. So if you can clean up your starting material, and you'll get a much better rosin on the back end. Like okay, now doing a dry sift for rosin makes sense. Whereas your yields and what's involved with you can get a 20% yield on sift, 30% yield because there's just so much particulate in it depending on your starting material. Use 150 screen, like so it's hard to get there. So if you have those types of units, I think would like again, like you're talking about doing something that's mass scale. I'm not talking highest quality is always going to be I think washing it and getting fresh frozen or that type of material, but coming in and serving a customer or somebody, like everybody smokes a little different. Like I love the best hash, but some people want to come in. Some people like Bud Light and Modelo's. You know what I mean? Like that's that type of product
for price,
that's coming
for
in.
price
like,
and flavor.
Yeah. Why doesn't it? It should exist for that people. Like,
and it does, and that's what I think. Like you're starting to see more and more of it because it is the reality. Once the production starts to go up and people start to get smarter about that, and creating viable fresh frozen that could be used for solventless production, and they properly store it and it's transported correctly and it's or stored and cured and or at least it's like harvested, stored, transported correctly, then you kind of start changing the game because at that point, the other thing you need is new genetics that are going to be higher yielding percentages.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of.
Well, yields are always there, but it's also like stability of the resin. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like some resin's just hard to work with.
The answer to all of it is new genetics. New genetics. New genetics. New genetics. New genetics, new genetics.
Well, I got excited about that. I got excited about that too because it is really a genetics game, which is the coolest part. Like I love, like if somebody ever like as a grower gives you a bag of pheno hunts, like that's the coolest shit ever. And
it's the coolest shit in the whole world. Like that's
And like that really
every
changes
Christmas
the game.
you've ever experienced all in one fucking bag right there.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Well, and I think like experience with genetics gets you to like what we were saying before, like bringing in like different flavors that currently don't process well under solvent. It's like different lemons and other things like hazes that I think would be really spectacular and melt. And breeding's how we get there, for sure.
Yep. No, I mean I've seen a couple different times where I've seen material that we've been able to put out there or we have on list, and we'll get it to one maker, and then I get it over to you, and you'll get like 2% more on that material. A couple different times I've seen that, and I'm like,
really?
And I think it's because you are like so fucking Jedi, paddle it up, get on down kind of a guy, and that's like that makes a big difference in your yields and what you're going to get. You're actually touching it all. So
yeah, you understand when the material's exhausted. Sometimes you do 5 washes, sometimes you do 7 if you have to. You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of hash there. So.
Yep. Get every little bit, grade it out.
So the California market, you've got a unique perspective working in multiple different markets and having seen the establishment of multiple different states. A number of these mature states are in a tough position as far as cannabis goes right now. Are you do you have an optimistic outlook over on the next 1 to 3 years, or do you feel as though it's going to get a little bit bumpier before it gets smoother?
I think what happened in California is like going to happen the whole country. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be tough. Yeah. Parts of it will be fucking great, but like this thing's going to grow, like new markets, like weed sucks everywhere. Like there's so much subpar weed out there. Maybe I'm just so picky, but like there's a better level of weed you want to smoke. And like when it's just like go into a dispensary, it's very hard to find like, weed that blows you away. So I think like we're going into mass production, especially if you go like federally legal, like once New York goes, like that's a lot of consumers. That's a big beast that needs to get fed. And you can't just feed them with like fire material. And like, that's not going to be the priority at first. The priority is make dollars so this thing succeeds and is an actual industry and business in 10 years. And like that's when like the craft things come in, and like we'll have higher end products because these big guys, these Walmarts of weed, like have lobbyists. They have like people who are fighting in the government to like make legalization happen and affect laws. And like step number 1 is legalization, and it fucking sucks. Like it's like they have to bust all these people who've been doing it for years, and now you're rating people, and like there's a lot of money to be made right now because like the legal market's not set up great. But after a while, these bigger companies, I think like are going to change laws and make it so people they want to make it easier to do business for them, to lower their margins. They're going to lower the margins so it makes it acceptable for craft people to then get in the market and elevate the quality of products. They'll always be there. You just got to know the guy. The plug's going to be a business for the next 10 years,
Yep. Just think Samuel Adams.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. Certain states like California's killing it, man. Like, there's obviously tons of solventless happening here, but like people don't even know what that is on the East Coast. A lot of them, like everybody here, like kind of, if you smoke weed, like, oh, like rosin. All right. Out there, they're like, what? They don't know the difference.
So, it's always been like that though, with every trend, with everything in cannabis. I feel like it's like from strains that are popularized to other things. So it's that's what's great about California, is that's if something is popping in California and it's jamming, it's just going to be a short amount of time before it makes its way, or the value of it is seen in the trend or in what's going on. So, but yeah.
Well, really, like I think solventless controls the entire market in a way of like genetics that are grown these days. Like that is, again, like rosin and hash rosin. Like if you're into weed, like that is the pinnacle really of hash and weed. It's like those are the most extreme flavors. Like, so it's I think we set a lot of trends genetics wise, what's grown, what flavors are liked, and I think it'll continue to do that. But
well, I think in a business setting, when you start showing them the difference between, what stage something's perishability is highest, and you can take a strain and turn it into melt and then store it far longer than that cannabis could ever sit around to be acceptable in a market or even have an impact on a finished product. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like the Disney, like chop off the head and freeze it sort of theory. And with that,
I'm not familiar with that theory, but okay.
All right. Well, Remember Walt Disney had his fucking head chopped off and they froze it because he's like, you know what, someday I'm gonna
I actually
fucking-
did not know that. This is the first time hearing.
No,
of
this
Walter
is like a
chopped
theory.
that.
This is just a theory. Like people say this. It's like a urban myth that like
Right.
Walt Disney. I don't know if it is. Maybe it is, but that his head's chopped off and it's frozen and they're waiting for later on. When it comes, what I mean by that is perishability. You know, the speed in which something goes bad. If you take cannabis, it's only perishable for a certain time. It goes bad pretty fucking quickly, especially when there's an expectation level of the consumer that the product has to be fucking at its best. And that period of time is even shorter when it comes to cannabis. So now what hash does is you can take any one of those strains if they wash, get a great yield from it. If you're a company, now you got some weight with some value to it. You could take it, leave it in the hash format, just a water hash format, store it. That shit could store for fucking years.
Yeah.
And it's still viable in the market. It still could be then taken, broken. You know, you might have different microns that are saved, could be turned into some pens, could be turned into rosin. You could do all edibles. You could do all these different stuff with it. It's just people are starting to realize that and they're getting smarter and smarter. And I think that's the real value to the business side of what water hash and what the conversion that happens into type 6 in California. The real value is that they're understanding like, oh, fuck, these guys are like root cellar experts that could take any one of these inputs, turn it into the fucking longest perishability product that could then be used in multiple different ways. And they're starting to see that. Like the number guys are starting to figure it out. And I think that's a big part of the popularity that you're starting to see, because we both know that like BHO only has a certain shelf life and all these other things before they continue to convert.
So it's a lot of people were figuring it out together too, right? Because like me as a hash maker, like I know that it needs to be preserved, and I know that like what is the best representation of the product. You know, we're talking, you know, how do we preserve that, Mel, and get that to the end customer? Like I'll show you what it is we need to get. Like you got to go get it there in a sense, right? Because there's a lot of things I don't do well, and so like having the farmer understand, the distro understand, like having everybody understand what they need to do. It's not like people are unwilling. They just don't know. They're trying. Everybody's pretty much trying their best. They're like, fuck, all right, like how do we figure this thing out? Because it is a new thing. Like who's transporting fresh frozen plant material? Like this is a new thing to be happening. So it's like everybody's kind of figuring it out together, and everybody has something to add. Like the logistics component, like you said, like how do you get that to somebody and it stays cold like that? Like what packaging does it need to be sold in? How does it need to be sold in a store? Like listen, they sell kombucha, right? Like that's just perishable very quickly. So like, okay, let's figure out this chain and this like logistics things with keeping, you know, everything in mind. It's a new industry. It's a new product that barely anybody but us fucking weed nerds understand that. Like, and it's hard to have people grasp it. Like if you don't get it, you know what I mean? So a lot of correlation to wine too, you know, like, so it's, you know, of that, like, again, the nuance. I don't want to be redundant in using that word, but it's like,
it's almost like somebody needs to create a system or a company that focuses on supply chain for solvents. I don't know. It's crazy.
I want to talk about aging though. Have you ever looked at the potential way to derive value, whether perceived or true, through aging of new age extracts? Like, is there a way where we can put an inert gas inside a chamber under pressure? And
sounds like a bad idea already.
I'm go
ahead. Sorry.
What do you think about that? Have you put any thought into stuff like that?
Yeah, again, like I don't want to put any like you're talking like nitrogen sealed shit.
Yeah, something like,
or like the seal the sanitizer. No, I think it's an awful idea because it's like, just like preserve it, man. Stop messing with it. You know what I mean? Stop like the trichomes are good. Like it's fresh material. Like Addison just said, it's perishable quick. Like if you start putting that in there, like, listen, that'll preserve it. But like, I'm always focused on quality. That's where my brain always goes to is like, well, no, because that would jeopardize the product. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you can do that and you can sell a B+ product and you'll have a great business. But like, if you want the best product, you really want to preserve what's about, get that high customer. Like, you're not putting gas in any jar that's getting sent out, right? Like, it just goes against the theory, I think.
Completely understood, but I mean, we have to admit that if you're in the coffee industry, the cup of coffee on the farm is always going to taste a lot different and better than the cup of coffee once it's shipped overseas and sent.
I think that's a great analogy.
Supply chain. So I think that we as people who are probably ultra connected in ways that some people would never even understand and have access to things that some people, just wouldn't be able to wrap their heads around. We have to understand that level that we are always questing for might not be attainable. So in the, hope and promotion and theorizing of building new markets and creating new value, and when being compared so often to the wine industry specifically, would you see there be any potential value in trying to age new age resin products in the same way that temple balls are being aged, and not in the same way, but create some way where the resin is either the loose resin is then aged and then pressed, or the resin is then pressed and then held in some kind of stasis and then served? Or do you think that, it's like what you said to me originally, it's what Addison said, this is a fresh product, it's perishable, we need to get it in and out. Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think it's a preference thing. Like, I like fresher product, right? I do think there's cure some product. Like, if you take like a temple ball, for instance, right, or take resin and cure it, like, that's fantastic. That's great. Like, and it's great to like smoke a hookah and like have that thick smoke that's like super sedative and super full of like that it's like a creamy smoke almost. Like, smoking a hookah is like a big hit. Like, it's like a very sedative type of thing. Like, it's a certain way to smoke.
Very narcotic.
Like, that's not how I enjoy it. I do think that like there's cured resins. It's not like people like, oh, it goes bad. Like, it develops, you know what I mean? And like, there's a certain like that type of hash is very like full flavor. Like, when you smell it, it hits something like it's almost like a primal smell. You know what I mean?
But when you say develops, like, no, it oxidizes and it degrades. That's what it's
technically, yeah. But same thing with like letting things ferment. Like, is that getting worse or better to you? Like, it's fermenting. Yes, technically it's decaying and doing this, but do we want it to do that? Cheese does that, right? And like, we have different flavors that come out. And like, even when you're applying heat, like, heat's supposed to degrade terpenes and like have them gas off. And it's like certain things develop as well. You know what I mean? Where it's like, just like your food, you're cooking and it's like developing a flavor. Like, technically you're like degrading terpenes. Like, what is, and a lot of it's bro science. I don't know like the technicality of that. Like, it's like, so it's, in my opinion, it's a very big of a preference thing, because some people love that. So to say like, oh, this degrades it, I think it changes it. I think it's a totally different product at that point.
When a hash degrades, when a hash of if it's a BHO or a solventless degrades, what happens is those terpenes start to change, right? And what it adds to is that it oxidizes, and now has the flavor and the smell of that oxidation that runs along with it. Like, when you have a hand hash and you could roll it, you're actually just mixing like hand grease and other shit into it to sort of cover that up. But it protects.
Right, but that's not. But that's not all it is, right? Because there's still other terps. There's still a flavor. Like, you can tell the differences between those cured hashes, right?
But who do you know that really loves hash? That's gonna hit on some like oxidized old ass fucking terps.
No, like
if someone handed me, you, or Jameson a jar and said, "Oh, hey, fellas," and we were like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And they were like, "Look, check this out," and they're like, "This is from fucking 1999, and it was BHO that I blew with me." We'd be like, "Oh, that's fucking cool, man!" Like, no, that's. But
BHO would be gross in that factor for sure.
Yes, but if it were some papaya melt from the KC Brains that fucking some dude made with Marcus's bags back in who knows what the fuck time, right? That was just straight still melt, and they brought it, they could say to you like, "Hey, look at this." And if they had a fucking dry ice cooler with them, like a super nerd, and they were like, boom, and pulled this shit out and showed it to you, that could be real. Because of the fact.
Yeah,
that shows
it could.
How,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I like the Mendocino, the Bryantist and Cherry Blossom Bell. What's the Heritage Mendocino? I like their model where it's not exactly what I'm like leading to, but they're washing the material and then holding the loose resin and then
press to order.
And then press to order
for sure.
I think that is a beautiful model, and I think you could take it one step further where you're actually like holding a significant amount of that loose resin for maybe up to a year or longer in the freezer, and then be like,
I agree with that whole. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you remember a year ago when we dropped that fire? Well, we actually have that exact fucking bottle, and it's coming out again, but we're going to charge you a little bit more for it. Because we
I don't even think that's like curing the material. That's like just storing it. That's preserving it. You know what I mean? Like press to order is fantastic.
Yeah.
What are you charging them for storing it? Get the fuck out of here.
I mean, you
want to do that.
You're bringing it back.
You got to be more creative.
To hold it. It's electricity.
Yeah. Listen, man, that's bullshit. What you got to do is create an NFT, and then any of the NFT holders, only the NFT holders can buy that. It's like, hey, man, there's two lines. There's an NFT holder line and there's the other line. The NFT holder line is going to run out. It's like, that's how you fucking do that. That's what NFTs really serve. Yeah. They serve a great purpose, but that's one of them.
You pay more for the 12-year scotch than the 10-year scotch.
You don't charge. So this is what I meant.
I don't think
if you went to your customer and said, I have this resin and I saved it for this many days and I'm going to reintroduce it and I'm going to charge you more, their first question is going to be like, what the fuck do you mean? You're going to charge me more? What, did you store it? Just like I said, where if you then bring the NFT in, you're like, here's a picture of a monkey smoking a joint. And because you own this, now you're going to get to go on the special line. And that's how it works. It's just, it breaks the fucking pain of, and now you own a monkey smoking a fucking joint too. That's the other part of it. So but that's what NFTs really are. That's their true value, is that it does break up and allow you to sort of reintroduce some of those things. But my thoughts are the smartest thing to do would be take that strain, that jar that you have, that supply, and do some blends and start leaking it out in the blends. Yeah. Because then you can actually have way more impact doing that way. Do some special releases.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an allure too with the product is too. If you're saving it for 10 years, like you're making that product and like, okay, now you're saving it that long. That would be great. Like in the future, you have like a place where you can go taste different, award-winning hashes. Say they keep a humidor or whatever it is, preserve all the melts and all the entries from different emerald cups, and like it's there for years, and you can go in and do a $500 tasting and taste all these things that's like ice water hash has just been fucking preserved and totally perfect. Yeah. And then you come out and you can flavor it. And like you say, like, oh, I've got thousands of grams. Well, I'm going to do this line and drop after this many years because ice water hash in the freezer, like it's there, it's good, it's not going to degrade. Like keep it in those right conditions, like it's going to be pretty much the exact same product. You know what I mean? Like, and you can, absolutely. I think that's where it definitely head.
Lamb chops and terp drops. Fucking put that whole thing together right there. The dinner.
Yeah. Well, I would love, like, how do people consume? Like, people have lounges where you can go buy weed. Like, I would love to go to a place before dinner where they have the weed. I want to walk in with nothing. I'm like, let's do a tasting of like these different hashes. Cool. Drop a few $100 and like get like this top level tasting of weed and then fucking head to dinner. Like, I don't need to buy a ton of weed. Like, if I could stop on the way somewhere, like, how great would that be?
Well, come to my house and we can do that.
Yeah. Where do you see consumption culture and cannabis culture going over the next 3 to 5 years? Like, do you see dabbing culture growing, or do you see it more growth in the accessibility of like a vape?
Hold on, I lost you here.
Oh,
I got you back. All right, what'd you say? Sorry, it's connected to my phone too.
Where do you see the concentrate consumption market going over the next 3 to 5 years? Do you see it focused on accessibility as far as, solventless vape carts? We're seeing that as the fastest growing category in the California market right now. Or do you see a large adoption of, dabbing happening across the board? Or do you feel that's going to remain niche?
I think dabbing will remain niche a little bit. I don't think it's weed's going mainstream for sure. Like everybody wants a pen. You see them everywhere at the bar. Everybody has one. Like not everybody's going to have a rig. They don't like how it looks. They don't like, it's a little unapproachable for sure. Like, I've had grandmas and grandparents, take hits off of like a Peak or a Carta or these other things that are coming to market, making like actually dabbing and consuming, these hashes the way they should be consumed. Very mainstream. Like I just tried the Proxy from Puffco last night. Thing's fan-fucking-tastic, just in a little pipe. It's this little mobile unit that you can really apply to anything. It's not a rig. It's like just this little thing. You could just, and people are going to make attachments for us left and right. Now you just throw this thing in, and it's like so much easier to travel with. You could do it in a pipe, any pipe, which is cool. They can get more creative with glass and like how it's going to look, and like it makes it very, very approachable for people. And I think those are going to come to market and make it more normalized. I also think I also think consumption lounges of like how, like, you know, like the clubs in Barcelona. I mean, I don't know if they will. I hope they do. But like the consumption lounges, if they allow them, is like, can I buy just a gram here? Like, I don't want to buy an eighth here. Like, just come in, smoke, like, and then go do your thing. So it's not like you have to buy weed. There's always a place you can stop by, just like you would stop at a bar and have a drink. It's not like you're going to always be buying tons of fucking, I've got 40, 30 packs of different, you know, brands. So I think hopefully we'll see consumption lounges in that fashion. As well as like consuming hash being a little more normalized and easier to do with products like the Puffcos, Cardos, the Proxy. I was really impressed with just travel aspect and like, you know.
Other than the travel aspect, what were you impressed about? I know we were chatting about it a little bit earlier. To me, it's kind of funny because it's just a dry Sherlock with a Puffco piece in it.
Yeah. I mean, the dry thing is like
those are like prison rips.
Hey, listen. I don't know. I liked it. I had a good experience with it. I thought it was, I've always had that. I mean, I'm used to hitting it with no air too, with no water. Like, that is nice, but the convenience aspect of it, of sitting there like with a group of people actually smoking it, like it was a good experience. You know what I mean? Like,
I understand the utility of it. That makes perfect sense, and I think the versatility, along with the utility, makes a lot more sense, and that's a great way to kind of take your head into a direction of creating just a larger atomizer that could be dropped down into any sort of different unit. That's brilliant. I mean, kudos on like developing something and engineering something in the proper direction. And that's like,
it makes it easier to travel, because I don't like traveling with even a Puffco or a Cardo because it has the water. I got to fill it up. It's this whole other thing. I travel all the time. Like, I can't worry about it. But that thing's something you could just throw. Like, they have the unit. It's like the size of this, right? If you had like a metal container, just throw that shit in your bag. You can throw it on any pipe. Usually when you get like, you don't have to travel with glass. Like, it could really, I think that aspect of it, that broadens hash consumption as a whole, you know?
No, you're generalizing this. Hold on. In order for that unit to work, you'd have to have a unit where you're going that pipe would fit into, or that system. You'd have to have a pipe in whatever place that system's compatible with. And so therefore,
but you don't think they're going to start making those left and right now with this?
But now you're buying into a whole other system. If you're a consumer, that's that's coming onto something new. I mean, look, like I just said, I just gave it mad flowers because it makes super sense in terms of engineering and evolution of what they're doing, compatibility, all these different components. But when it comes to us, the consumer at our level and what we do, then that means that now I'm a guy who, has a like mothership or whatever. And okay, like that thing's compatible with a 14 or a 10 with a, I put a grommet on it and it fits down, and I don't have to worry about it because I'm using a nail, and the nail I have, it fits my caps, and, and I have this system that works. Now I have to change that system to make it compatible to this. And I have to have multiple systems in different places. And it's like, not for me. I don't feel like it's going to work super great, or like dry rips are not my thing. Like, I'm not sitting in the holding tank and fucking in Bios Escondios getting ready to get fucking checked in or anything.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we'll see. I had a good experience with it. I really liked it, but I understand what you're saying. You're making a lot of good points. But listen, all I know is I had a good time last night with the Puffco Proxy.
Okay.
But and I was impressed. So, but I do agree that it is. I mean, like how I just think
I do have some questions. I have legitimate questions, and I'm not joking. How much hash can you put into it? Like how much?
Looks like the same atomizer they use on the Puffco. It's the same thing. Okay. So it's not like massive. It's not like I'm sure you wouldn't have fun with it.
You said you said you were smoking it with a group of people. How many of you guys were able to smoke off of it and get one of these tasty, super awesome dry rips that you're talking about?
I think there was a rotation of 4 of us. Each got like 4 dry rips or so.
Okay. Yeah. That's good though.
It wasn't bad.
And they're kind of like a little Gandalf-y kind of pipe too, isn't it?
It is. It was comfortable smoking. I felt like, felt proud.
I will admit, I was very impressed when I saw the Ryan Fit Eagle Claw.
Yeah, that shit looked dope.
Yeah. I'm not gonna like,
again, makes it more approachable. It's a fucking It's
Very
it's a
fancy.
hash pipe.
Very
It is very fancy.
Gandalfy or whatever, and very fancy.
It comes with a monocle in the box, actually.
Does it? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a really smart idea.
It doubles as a hash jar.
I love it. Very smart idea.
Do you think
all jokes aside,
do you think going forward it's more valuable for brands that target solventless consumers into next year to target new flavors or higher quality? Like, where do you think that brands are differentiating themselves in the next 12 to 24 months?
Probably flavors. I think quality is a long ways off for a lot of people.
Where do you see
that full melt is rare, I think.
Where do you see that that flavor direction going? Do you see it matching the flower smoker direction of candy gas, or do you see it leaning heavier in a different direction?
Candy cream, like almost like not papaya, but like that chocolate, that moonbow, like those have a certain they have a certain flavor that I think is really impressive and very underrepresented. We're dominated in California with again, cookies and runts and creams and it's a lot of very similar gassy type of stuff, but there's a whole other spectrum of hazes and Northern Lights types of profiles that are mixed into these different things that getting those coming through are really pleasant in hash if you do it right. Mm-hmm. So I would see it as more states start to broaden out and legalize, and these other growers that are coming out of the fucking woodwork and entering in strains to the market that they still have that are that are longer flowering weeks. I think that we'll see cool stuff like that. I don't know, 12 to 24 months. I think might just see another mashup of papaya for a couple more years and these GMOs, and I think that'll be the mass produced stuff. But hopefully genetics let us process that those different types of strains. That chocolate from resin extracts is still one of my favorites.
So tasty. That's an Oregon. I think that's an Oregon grower that has that cut. That's
Oregon's Archive too with Moonbow. So
Archive's they're holding on the goods, man. They got
yeah.
Who are some breeders or some cultivars? What are your top 3 or 5 cultivars that you've come across? I guess not cultivars. I guess actual rosin or melt that you've come across in the last 6 to 12 months that have really impressed you. Who's cultivated them and who's processed them?
Well, my favorite melt by far was the lemon dog shit at Legends from Ice House. That was fucking awesome melt. I really liked that. That flavor was just thought it was great.
Good.
I haven't seen a bunch of hash made, but again, there's that Haley Piff out on the East Coast right now is cultivar wise, that flavor. I don't know if anybody's watched it, but that's definitely one of my favorites right now. And of all time, just that haze, I can't get away from for some reason.
Yeah, but you're an old man. You're an old man too, so that's kind of different. We're talking maybe say you're 23 years old right now, and you're thinking about some genetics. What would your thoughts would be?
Bananas, dude. I love banana. Bananas always get something. Banana will serve you right for flour, for fucking hash, whatever you want to do with it. Get something some banana OG, preferably, or something with it. Banana, papaya,
and
mixture,
some gas,
fruit.
And then you get.
I would steer.
Right now,
I would steer away from GMOs or papayas, straight up in just flour, because I don't think they're that great in flour. But I do think get something with some fruit and some cushion there, and that's right up your alley. That's the easy go-to.
I've been doing a mix. I've been doing a mix of banana OG with this papaya that I found, and then the what's it called? The black garlic from Rosin Tech.
Okay.
And then you just a little dab of each, kind of mix it, and then it makes a pretty big dab. But then you just dab that. You do the triple mixer and it's very tasty.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of where my head is now. I need a little bit of gas, a little bit of GMO.
I'll have to come by and try one of those.
Yeah,
I got a red eye tonight. I'll come by and try one of those before I go.
I'm only 30 minutes from LAX, so let's go.
Yeah.
Ben, what's one lesson you wish you learned earlier in your hash making career, and what's one lesson you wish you learned earlier in your professional business career?
Whew. That's gonna be a tough one to answer. I'm just like, I kind of would think we touched on it before, like just with like work hard, man, and like I just kind of trust the process. Like stop, like I've been so worried about like, all right, what do you do? Like, how are you going to succeed in this life? I come from the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. Like, how am I figuring out like career wise what I'm doing? And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to meet some people who've been an opportunity, but like the lesson is like just work hard and like keep going, working hard, being humble, being a good person. Don't take more than than you than there. Give as much as possible. Work as hard. Like that's just made all the difference. I feel like I said blessed. So I feel very blessed and happy with where I'm at, and like being able to live the lifestyle I live, and it's because of those things. And like, yeah, just be good and fucking work as hard as you can, and like enjoy it, and like stop. I don't like it takes time to do that. Like personally, like that's what I've learned. It's just like, yeah, trust the process.
Don't worry too much.
Yeah, like it's going to be fucked up either way. There's problems your entire time, so it's like, all right, like every day is just a solution to a problem. Because
get good at solving problems, motherfucker.
Exactly. And
what do you expect?
Yeah. What was the other one? What was
rosin
the other?
For your hash making? So like all the times you've been at the press, or a lesson that you wish you had learned a little bit earlier on in your
slow down. Slow down is like slow and sure is better than fast and fucked up, dude. Like drop a tray, or like you when you're making making hash to me is easy. It's like you follow the steps, you make the product essentially. Like I know you just got to keep doing it. It's like you keep moving quick, like almost enjoy it. Like you're making hash, it's not really hard work. Like if you mess up by putting like the 90 bag above the 120 and now your 90's fucked, like it's just like those types of headaches, dude. Like slow down. It's like it's kind of a pain in the ass to work with this stuff. It's sticky. Like how do you we're talking about that full melt, like you get 2,000 grams of full melt, like you got to transfer, you got to make some rosin bags. Like how do you, it's just slow down, and like slow and sure is better than fast and fucked up with making hash. Because I've, when you drop that fucking 200 gram jar of melt on the floor, a mason jar, and it fucking shatters, like, I don't know. That's slow and sure.
Absolutely, man. I think that's really good advice. So out of the last 5 to 7 years in your cannabis career, if there was one moment that you would have to say was your proudest, what would that be?
I think Legends was up there for sure. But the other one, I guess I'd have to say, I got the lecture for Cornell University. And I haven't, I never went to college or anything, but I always felt like guilty that I should have. And like being able to lecture I lecture on their hemp sciences class, specifically on solventless extraction, going over like, solventless 101 of ice water hash and rosin and dry sift and like, how to make it and stuff. So, and we get to do demos with the lab and everything. And so like, that was kind of a surreal experience to be on like an Ivy League campus, like doing this. And that I guess would be the proudest, because it's like, that shit's mainstream now. And like, so, and that was like, I didn't try again. Like I felt like, I just felt proud to get there, because I wasn't expecting that, to be like lecturing at this class. They're all fucking, all these students are taking fucking notes and asking questions. Like, it's just, it was, these kids in class, they were learning it for just as one of their courses. It was pretty interesting. So that was, I'd have to say that was top number one.
That's awesome, man. That would be a pretty surreal experience for sure.
Yeah.
Do you what advice do you give for your friends who are currently operating in the traditional market and seeing the mayhem that is the legal space? Are you telling them to hold fast? Are you telling them to look for other opportunities? Like what is the advice you're giving right now?
I don't know, man. I would say stay like if you want to make money, stay in the traditional market. Like it's a whole different way of operating. And yeah, I would say hold on tight, because like it's fucking tough. People are now getting like raided in these other states, and it's like okay, were the fucking cops back? Because for a while, like nobody cared about weed, and like we were allowed to flourish, and so were they for a while. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's about a genetics game. Like everybody who's in the, a lot of people who are in the traditional market have a huge genetics library, and those genetics for solventless processing or for flour, like having a new flavor that hits, like GMO when it comes out, or cookies when it came out, like animal cook or change the game as far as like there's like a new flavor profile. There's like primary colors, and that like added a new primary primary colors was primary flavor profiles, and that added a new one almost to me. And it's like, so I think it's about genetics. I was talking to someone before. I was like, just it's a genetics thing, man. It's just so much money and genetics in it, and it's like growing and putting out your own flower or your own hash is really tough to do until, like we were talking before, maybe like markets like 10 years ahead. So if you're a genetics person like that, and like hash makers, it's like you gotta like find a way into the legal market, I guess, and that's like really hard, daunting process, I think, as well.
What's got your focus these days? Like, what are you focusing on? I know you're doing a lot of consulting, you're traveling a lot, kind of living out of a suitcase. Can you talk a little bit about the projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm so since I left Rosin Tech and stuff, I've been doing consulting, and I've been working with, I think it's 4 different clients at the moment. I'm in like Boston, like Massachusetts heavily, just a couple projects starting in Jersey, even Delaware, a little bit of Colorado, and out in California, all like setting up labs and like teaching people how to make hash and rosin at like a very large scale, giving everything from the 101 on what is solventless to helping them develop products and like put out high-end rosin as well, and helping them source and helping them understand. And it's like, it's really an education thing, which has been cool. And I like that a lot. Like, it's cool to teach everybody. Everybody's always excited to learn, rather than like the repetitive thing of like doing the same thing every single day. So I'm going to different markets and stuff like that. And, kind of getting into way more than just ice water hash and rosin that I've been doing for the past few years. It's like getting back into other solvent processes and helping people like make products for their market, whether it's from ethanol or distillate or CO2, like what's the best extraction method for whatever their application is, and really like going into far other things other than solventless a lot of the time, but really also having a strong focus on that with most people I'm working with. So that's.
That's awesome, man. Are you like currently booked up, or are you open to taking on new projects? Like, can people reach out?
Booked, like there's a lot going on, but I'm always looking. If I can fit it in, absolutely. Like, I'm kind of like a pinball right now going around. So I have a slightly more bandwidth, I suppose, but yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm never really looking for it. Like, I'm happy with the projects I'm working with right now, but I'm not opposed to like doing other stuff, like setting up a lab and like, picking out equipment and doing efficiencies like that specifically for solventless is like, it's kind of like, it can be a very quick project depending on like what it's working on. And it's always cool to like go to different places and, San Diego or fucking these other new markets, like Florida's opening up and like Michigan's been rocking out like a motherfucker for years. But all these other new markets that are opening and getting to do that has been really cool. So, go somewhere exotic, I'm always down. But
awesome, man. Yeah. Where's the best place for people to find you? Like, how can people reach you?
I guess that's a good question. Probably just, Instagram, of course, is an easy one. I'm always responding to that. But I guess, email, I suppose. I'm really only on Instagram a little bit. I'm not very active as I should be on that. But yeah, man, probably that. Awesome,
man. We'll make sure we put that, both your IG as well as your email in the in the description of the show here. And yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me. It's like it's cool to be even considered for this and doing it. It's been a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
All right,
cheers, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Later.
We've got a very exciting show next week with Sherbinski. And make sure you check out Melting of the Heads. Tickets are still available July 15, 16, 17. So thanks, everyone. Take it easy and have a great Saturday.
Later,
guys.